Well, greetings and salutations, everybody. Welcome to my YouTube channel. My name is John Campea, and this is a special companion video. What are companion videos normally? Well, I'm glad that you asked. You see, every day on the John Campea Show, Monday through Friday, we take time to take some live questions, but we don't always have time to get around to all the live questions that get sent in. But I want to make sure those questions get answered properly in a video, so I gather them up and we address them here on companion videos. Now, this is for the John Campea Show that we did on Wednesday, August the 21st. Now, this was, of course, the day that we talked about on the show, the big split that's happened between Disney and Sony over the whole Spider-Man issue. Now, we obviously, because it's such a big issue, a lot of you guys, more than normal, sent in some questions. So a lot of the stuff that we're going to be covering here today, probably on this companion video, is going to be regarding the Spider-Man stuff, but there's going to be other stuff thrown in there along the way. We got a lot to get to, so let's not waste any time and dive right into it. And the first one we're going to start getting caught up on is from Imran Islam, who writes, Marvel fans on Twitter and Facebook are telling people to boycott everything that is Sony. When did the fandom get this stupid and toxic? What a bunch of noobs. Yeah, there's nothing positive about that. Again, I feel strongly, and I think myself, Rob, whatever, this is all Disney's fault. You know, Sony was more than happy to continue on with the agreement. Disney wanted more, which is understandable too, but they asked for too much more. And, you know, I read on the show this morning as another movie executive in town here that we all know wrote to me saying, look, what fans don't understand is that no company in their right mind would have agreed to what Disney is asking for. Nobody would have. And just because you like Disney doesn't mean other people should bend over, take a nice big swab of lube, rub it on the cornhole, and say, go ahead, Disney, anytime you like, and then say, thank you, sir, may I have another? Just because you like Disney stuff, and I'm a big Disney fan. Oh, well, geez, look at this. I'm a big Disney fan. But no, what Disney was asking for was completely irrational, and it's not their fault. So, you know, then this whole thing about calling for boycotts of companies, just let's not be idiotic, people. Let's not be idiotic. Anyway, that's just my thoughts on that. Anyway, Dimsum05 writes, did Feige just pull a movie pass on Sony? Yikes. I'm not quite sure what you mean by that exactly, but just the illustration is funny to me. All right, James Bonner writes, what about Tom Holland? Do we know how he's going to be affected by this? Well, as far as I understand, he still has one film left on his contract. So if Marvel and Disney don't get together and make a deal, which they still may do, fingers crossed, which they still may do, then Sony can go ahead and make one with Tom, and Tom is under contract for at least one more. Now, maybe he'll do 10 more. Maybe he'll sign on for an extension. Who knows? But as far as we know, he is signed on to do at least one more, as far as we know. Dimsum05 writes, I lost the kid. Of course, that's a reference to Tony's line in Endgame. I lost the kid. We all lost. Feige said, we lost the kid. That's good. I like that. James Germain writes, hello, John. Which is more likely, a movie about Revan or Terra Visla? And also, which do you prefer? Well, more likely is Revan. I mean, Revan is, if for no other reason, by the way, let me state this. I think neither is likely. Neither is likely. But I think if you're going to talk about which has the best chance, even though I still think is very, very unlikely, I would say Revan. Which would I prefer? Honestly, I would prefer neither. Look, it's not that I don't like the classic stories and all that kind of stuff that have those characters in the Star Wars universe, but I frankly, I'd rather hear news stories. And I've talked about that before. I would rather hear news stories myself. Anyway, David Crabtree writes, Sony made the right move. Sony profits more from a film grossing $700 million that they make alone than grossing $1.1 billion that Disney gets 50% of. Yep, absolutely they do. There's just no way around that. They absolutely do. It was absolutely, David, the right move for Sony. Dan Ketchum writes, so Spidey will now pretend none of that other stuff happened. Well, that's really not the problem. Having Spidey not reference anything in the MCU isn't nearly as much of a problem as the MCU now trying to explain why Spidey wasn't there. As I joked about on Twitter, remember how important they made Spider-Man? Happy Hogan says to Spidey in Far From Home, the reason Tony did what he did was because he knew you'd be here to protect the world. Well, I guess Tony sacrificed himself for nothing. So yeah, I guess what would happen is the MCU will just pretend that Spider-Man was never there, and Spider-Man will just pretend he was never in an MCU. I mean, they'll work something out. Both in the MCU, they'll arrange it in such a way that it'll be minimum impact. With Sony and Spider-Man, they'll do the same thing. But yeah, it's going to be a little bit of awkward, Dan. It's definitely going to be a little bit awkward. Let's see. Sully writes, Sony should have at least countered with something like they did counter. That's the thing. Sony did counter. It's right in the original Deadline report. It says they went back to Disney with several configurations and Disney turned them all down. So just be clear about that. Just be very, very, go back and read the original article in Deadline. They made it clear Sony did go back and make several counteroffers, to which Disney just rejected all of them. They wanted all or nothing, and that just didn't work. Anyway, sure to counter with something like 10% because I believe it's only because of the MCU connection that Far From Home made $1 billion. You mean, well, Far From Home making $1 billion? Yeah, but let's not pretend that Sony Spider-Man movies were only making like $300 million. Sony Spider-Man movies were making a lot of money. None of them made less than $700 million. None of them made less than $700 million. And so let's not pretend that, yeah, $1 billion is big, but let's not pretend like it's miles more than any of the Sony Spider-Man movies made. No, it's a difference, but it's not that big of a difference. It's not insignificant by any stretch, but it's not momentous, the difference. So let's not pretend that Sony Spider-Man movies were only making like, $400 million. No, they were making close to $1 billion, and the movie that made the least amount of money was over $700 million. I mean, it's not that radical of a difference. That's something we got to keep in mind here. Anyway, moving on. Andrew Riaz writes, who actually paid for these Spider-Man movies? Sony did. Some are saying Disney did most of the work for these movies, so they have the right to ask for more money. Well, no, here's the thing. They have the right to ask for more, but there's a difference between more and 10 times more. If you make $1,000 a month and you go into your boss, say, I'd like to get a raise. Okay. How about $1,100 a month or $1,200 a month? Hell, maybe if the boss is feeling generous, $1,300 a month. Nah, I'm thinking $10,000 a month, 10 times more. See, there's asking for more, and then there's extortion. What they were doing was extortion. Now remember, here's the thing. That deal that they had, Disney negotiated it. Disney negotiated a great deal. Sony pays for everything. They get all production fees. Disney gets all production fees. Disney gets 5% of first dollar gross. That's all pure profit. Plus, they got 100% of all the merchandising rights, which has made them a fortune. Plus, they get to take this character, Spider-Man, that they don't have the rights to, and put him in their other MCU movies. Disney said when they made that deal that this is a great deal for Disney. And they were right. Disney was right. They made a fair deal, a great deal, and it's a deal that Disney themselves negotiated. Is it okay for them to come back now, just a couple of years later, and ask for more? Sure. Yeah. 10 times more? And ask Sony to let Disney in on co-financing rights, which makes Sony give up some of their rights. They're asking Sony to give up a portion of their rights to their most profitable character. It was completely unreasonable. It's all based on a deal that Disney themselves negotiated and told the world was a fair deal and a good deal for Disney. And now they come out asking for literally 10 times more, plus asking Sony to give up some of their rights. It's completely extortion. It's completely unreasonable. Asking for more is reasonable. What they were asking for was extortion. It was completely unreasonable. And as I've been told by several studio executives, what Disney was asking for, no studio would have agreed to. None. Nobody in their right mind, I was told. Nobody in their right mind would agree to that. And Sony didn't, and good for them that they didn't. The right to ask for more? Yeah. That much more? No. Imad writes, is it possible that this absurdly large request from Disney was calculated to maybe force a higher bargaining chip with Sony for 28 to 35%? Yes, that would be the first thing that would go through my mind as well. But according, again, to the Deadline report, Sony went back to them with several counteroffers and they just shot it all down. I think what Disney really wanted here was co-financing. And when you get into a co-financing deal, you're giving up some of your rights. Because once you become a co-financer, you also acquire that certain rights. These are the rights that Sony does not want to give up, and they never should give up. They should never even begin to wane or bend on them at all. So I thought the same thing, Imad, that it was just a bargaining ploy, but apparently they did go back and make offers. It's not just the money that Disney wants. They want some controlling interest in Spider-Man again. And Sony is saying, no. You're not getting any controlling interest. Even if it's a minority of the controlling interest, you get none. This is our property. So I don't know. It's just crazy unfortunate. MP writes, one of two. Marvel has TV rights. Disney already has a Spider-Man TV show for kids, but would you like a new 90s Spider-Man animated series on Disney Plus? They should make it mature, at the same time innocent, like Batman, the animated series. They have the What If series, but Spider-Man is Marvel's flagship character. I honestly am not a big fan of the animated stuff. For the most part, there are exceptions. So would I be interested in Disney or Sony or anybody doing a new Spider-Man animated series? Actually, no. Personally, I'm not interested in it. That doesn't mean there wouldn't be a lot of people interested in it. There clearly would be a lot of people who'd be interested in something like that. Unfortunately, I'm just not one of them. But yes, as far as I know, Disney would maintain the rights to do an animated television series for Spider-Man. As far as my understanding goes, Disney would still have the right to make an animated television series. They can't do a live action television series and they can't do an animated movie, but they could do an animated television series. That's something they could do. Something that I'm personally interested in, not in the least, but it is something that they would have the option of doing if I understand it correctly, and I may not. Okay. Captain Confidence Entertainment writes, I like that name. Wasn't Once Upon a Deadpool a PG-13 attempt? Yes, but remember, it's not like that was an original movie, right? It was a lark based on Deadpool 2, right? It was a gag of Deadpool 2. It's not like it was an original movie. It's not like Once Upon a Deadpool was not a new Deadpool movie. It was a joke PG'd version of Deadpool 2 as a joke, and that was a joke. It's not an example of, oh, here's what happens when you do Deadpool PG-13. No. It's a shtick of Deadpool 2 where the joke was that it's PG-13. It wasn't an original movie made PG-13. I think that's an important distinction. That's a very, very important distinction, I think, at any rate. All right. Johnny Wiener writes, one of three. I must say, even though I'm not a fan of MCU version of Spider-Man, I am shocked. I do think Sony is better making Spider-Man than Disney Marvel, but I get it. Business before anything else. So no matter what happens next, I'll always watch a Spider-Man anything and always be a Spidey fanboy. My last name is actually pronounced Weiner. Okay, Weiner. All right, there you go. I like that. No, I'm with you. Look, at the end of the day, I think all any of us can ask for is just a good movie. That's all. I don't care if Disney gives it to us. I don't care if Sony gives it to us. I don't care if Fox gives it to us. I don't care if Paramount or Lionsgate or Annapurna or A24 or so. I don't care who. I just want a good movie. That's all I care about. Bottom line. And whether they make another one with Disney, just give me a good movie. Like they did with Far From Home, like they did with Homecoming. If they do it, Sony does it on their own, just give me a good movie. Like you did with Into the Spider-Verse or Spider-Man 2 or the original Spider-Man, or as I contend, the first Amazing Spider-Man I thought was actually quite good. Not so much the second Amazing Spider-Man, granted, yes, but and not so much Spider-Man 3. But I think Spider-Man 1, Spider-Man 2, Into the Spider-Verse, the first Amazing Spider-Man, I think these are all really good, entertaining movies. I think Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse is easily the best Spider-Man movie ever made. That includes Far From Home, Homecoming, Spider-Man 2, whatever. And I think Spider-Man 2 is the second best one ever made. So ultimately, I don't care. But it is really nice. I've liked the partnership between Sony and Disney and the movies that has given us. I really do. And I really hope that they're able to continue it. I mean, if they don't, they don't. And I'll just appreciate whatever movies we get. But it would be nice if they could work that out, Johnny. It really would. All right. Django 19 writes, I'm starting to lose respect for Disney. With the releases, canceling projects, PG-13 Deadpool, and now this, they're the biggest company and still greedy. Well, I mean, look, I don't mind greed. Wall Street, Michael Douglas. Greed is good. Greed works. I don't mind greed in business. They're there to make money, and they're there to make as much money as they can. But when your greed starts to attempt to screw other people or other companies over, that's when it becomes a problem. As far as Disney with re-releases, they only did that once. They only did that once with Endgame. I wasn't happy with it, and I wasn't happy when Sony was going to try to do it with Spider-Man Far From Home. I don't like that. But to be fair to Disney, they only did that once, and that was with Endgame. Canceling projects. Look, every studio cancels projects. This was a big takeover. There were going to be cancellations. You can't ask Disney to keep making movies if they think those movies are going to lose them money. So that was actually, I get it. I'm not happy about it, but I get it. I'm not going to blame them for that. PG-13 Deadpool, I do not want at all. So look, Disney does a lot of great things. Like I said, I am a Disney fan. I do not like the way they're handling this situation. I think Disney is 100% to blame for this situation. I think the facts are clear. And if you don't have mouse-eared, shaped, rose-colored glasses over your eyes of fandom, then you'll see that Disney is clearly to blame for this. And they are acting unreasonably. Yet I maintain I am a Disney fan. And we'll just have to see. I don't think we throw out, if they do one or two things that are dumb, we don't throw the whole thing under the bus, right? So, well, we'll see. I mean, I'm still a big Disney fan. It is what it is. Stubble McShave writes, will Spidey have to be rebooted now since he's no longer part of the MCU? And if so, will they recast him? I don't think you have to reboot him. You have to alter the story, right? You just have to imagine that, there was no Shield, there was no Iron Man, there was no whatever. There are things you can do, and you can keep Tom Holland. I don't know this. I have no insider information. But I would be surprised if Sony, first of all, if Disney and Sony don't get their act together and reform a new deal, which I still think there's a chance they could. But if they don't, I'd be very surprised if Sony didn't use Tom Holland for the next one. And instead of rebooting the character, they'll kind of reset the story a bit and maintain Tom Holland as Spider-Man. People love Tom Holland as Spider-Man. I don't see there being any real reason to get rid of him. I don't see there being a reason to reboot the entire character, but rather just kind of reset his universe. It'll be tricky, but there's a way to do it, and I think they'll find a way to do it. Okay, Kick It to the King writes, I understand Disney wants to put up their percentage, but 50, hell no. Kevin Feige better be in Iger's office saying, what the fuck are you doing? Disney would be happy with 10 to 20% take. Sony wants original deal in place. Why not? Disney already had all the merchandising rights. This is where greed is bad. Oh no, I agree. And again, part of the problem here is not just how much percentage of first dollar gross does Disney get? They also want a co-financing deal. Now, some people may look at that. People who are a little bit short-sighted will look at the co-financing deal and say, well, isn't that better for Sony? Disney will put up some of the money to produce the movies. That's good for Sony, isn't it? No, because once you get into a co-financing deal, you're actually giving up some of your rights to the project. And that is something Sony will not do. As long as Sony is the one paying for everything, they maintain 100% control. That's important. That's very important. They should not budge 1 ounce on that. So Disney doesn't just want a bigger cut of the money. I'm sure they would have an easier time negotiating. Disney wants co-financing rights. And Sony's like, F no. And rightfully so, they're saying F no. And that's part of the problem here. Kick It to the King writes, first Feige had to get through Perlmutter. Now he has to get through Iger concerning Spidey. Disney is just the distributor. Why do they want a cut? No, Disney isn't the distributor. Sony is the distributor. They want a cut because they're working on it. It's a valuable property. They want money for it. I get it. I don't blame Disney at all for wanting a cut and maybe even wanting a bigger cut. And by the way, Bob Iger is the one who has facilitated. There's a reason Marvel was not anything until Disney took it over. Marvel was nothing, compared to what it is today until Disney took it over and started shepherding it and all that kind of stuff. So I wouldn't say, I think Kevin Feige will be the first one to tell you he wouldn't be where he is today if it weren't for Bob Iger and Disney. He'll be the first one to tell you that. So this isn't like a Perlmutter situation where him and Perlmutter never got along. And Perlmutter was actually, hindering what Feige was doing. Bob Iger has facilitated everything that Kevin Feige has done. I've heard Kevin Feige say that. He will be the first one to tell you that. So no, it's not like there's a problem with him and Bob Iger. Nathan Oswald writes, Disneyland, the greediest place on earth. Well, hey, look, let's be honest here. Every studio is going to try to get as much as they can. Disney, I don't blame them for trying to get as much as they can, but you got to recognize when you've gone too far. And hopefully they'll recognize that. Kick It to the King writes, if you told me there was no deal, I would think it's Sony wanting Venomverse in the MCU, not Disney being stupid. All blame towards Bob Iger, not Sony. Yeah. And look, I don't think there's any problem with Disney wanting more, right? I don't think there's anything wrong with asking for more. But there's a difference between asking for more and then telling the other company to bend over, lube up, and take it up the cornhole and say, thank you, sir. There's a big difference. And what Disney was asking is completely unreasonable. Suthius writes, hey guys, just watched Hotel Mumbai. I love that movie. I was late to the party on that one. Intense, terrifying, heartbreaking. Dev Patel can do no wrong. And my man Jason Isaac was in it. I enjoyed it. Armie Hammer was also really quite good in it. I thought Armie was really, and you're right, Dev Patel was absolutely fantastic. Was checking box office in Rogue One. Next question. Suthius. Was checking box office in Rogue One is the only $1 billion movie to be pretty much split 50.4 domestic, 49.6 foreign. Thoughts on what this box office says? I don't know that it really says anything, to be honest with you. I don't know. Other than the fact that Vader sells, and they really promoted Vader in that movie, and maybe that sold a little bit more overseas than what other Star Wars movies will, but it's hard to really analyze what that ultimately means, other than maybe Vader is just a more recognizable figure, and that appealed more to international audiences. This is a good question, though. Suthius also writes, have y'all seen the altered trailer for the old Full House show with each character deepfaked with, I did, with Ron Swanson face? Oh my goodness, it's pure gold. I rewound and watched that about 3 times. For those of you who don't know, Ron Swanson is a character on Parks and Rec. And why am I forgetting the name of the guy? Hey, Google, who plays Ron Swanson? I don't know why I'm forgetting.
Ron Swanson was played by Nick Offerman.
Nick Offerman,
By the
okay.
way, he's performing in Anaheim on October 13th.
Ooh, I gotta look into that. So Nick Offerman, the actor, played this character Ron Swanson, who is absolutely a top 10 all-time favorite television character for me. Ron Swanson on Parks and Rec is great. So somebody took the Full House opening credits and they digitally put Ron Swanson's face on each and every character. And it's hilarious. If you haven't seen it, you should absolutely check it out because it is great. All right, Suthius writes, in my opinion, if this Spider-Man will no longer be in the MCU and without a good exit explanation, Sony might as well reboot again if they want him with Venom. I don't necessarily think that's 100% necessary. It may not be a bad idea, but I don't think it's 100% necessary. You literally can just now have Tom there and just never mention what happened, in the other movies. You'd have to be very creative about how you work around that, but I think it's possible. Is it the best idea? Maybe not. But I don't think it's 100% necessary that you have to do that. I think there are creative ways that you can do it. And, with the acknowledgement, look, this Spider-Man is no longer in the MCU. So he's not going to be referencing Iron Man. He's not going to be referencing the events of the blip or the snap. That's not going to be happening, but it's going to still be him, Aunt May in New York, protecting the neighborhood, blah, 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 blah. And you're just not going to hear references to these other characters again. And I think it'll work. Let me rephrase. I'm not going to say it will work. I think it can work. I think it could work. Could also go terribly wrong, but I think it could work. Jinyu Hichi writes, Sarlacc Pit, do you like the original or special edition better? There's something, look, the special edition gave more dimension to obviously when it comes out and all that kind of stuff and the extra tentacles, but with the original, there's a mystery to it, right? Because all you see is this giant mouth in the ground, and that's it. It's all you see. Not everything about the special edition sucks. Some things in the special edition are actually quite good. None of the new scenes, but some of the advanced, more updated visual effects and stuff like that actually are quite good. But I'm going to say in this case, I'm thinking the original is better. At least that's what I'm going to say for right now. Paths Unwritten writes, Spidey may be Sony's, but all aspects of the universe and its story legally belong to Disney. No, that's not true at all. Right? How can Holland Spidey's life story continue? Because they do not belong to Disney. They belong to Sony. It's their character. It's their movie. They financed it. That's why it's important to Sony. And I'm glad you brought that up. That's why it's important to Sony to not allow to give co-financing rights to another company. If Disney had been a co-financer on those Spider-Man films, then yeah, Sony couldn't just take that Peter Parker and continue on, because part of that guy's rights would belong to Sony because Sony was a co-financer of those movies. That's why it's important that Sony not allow Disney to become a co-financer, whether it's for 10%, 50%, whatever. They can't let that happen because they'd be giving up control of their character. They'd be dividing up control. Because if Disney was a financer on the movies that introduced Ned and this MJ and all that kind of stuff, then no, Sony later couldn't just go off and make their own movies with those characters again without Disney signing off on it, because Disney was a co-financer on the movies that originated them. As things stand, those movies, Far From Home, Homecoming, Sony financed those movies. It's their movie. Those movies belong to Sony. And any characters or whatever in those movies belong to Sony. Other than the pre-existing MCU characters like, Stark or Fury or anything like that. But everything else belongs to Sony. And that's why Sony cannot allow Disney to become a co-financer. And that's a great way to bring it up, Paths Unwritten. All right. Suthius writes, Iron Studios just released a pre-order for Iron Man with Gauntlet about to snap. And I said to myself, damn it, I need this, don't I? Damn you, Iron Studios. I'll tell you what, Iron Studios makes some really good stuff. Really good stuff. It's never healthy for my bank account. Although I do a pretty damn good job of resisting buying anything. But whenever I'm at like Comic-Con or I'm in one of these collectible shops that has these, whether it's like Hot Toys or Iron Studios or whatever, they've got this stuff out. I could lose so much money so fast. And that's one of the things, Suthius, that would be really easy to lose your money on. All right. Rich McConnell writes, how successful can the MCU be without having Iron Man, Captain America, and Spider-Man? Well, that's the $1 million question, isn't it? I mean, look, Ant-Man made over $600 million. Doctor Strange made over $700 million, I believe. These are movies that didn't have Captain America, didn't have Iron Man, didn't have Spider-Man. So it could be very successful. As successful as it's been, well, that's the $1 million question. Let me rephrase. That's the $1 billion question. I don't know. But here's the thing. Disney has been so successful. Marvel has been so successful. They don't even need the MCU to be as successful as it was to still be mega, 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 mega hits. They can continue to be incredibly successful and mega hits without being as successful as the MCU was. I'm going to go out on a limb and say this. I don't think the MCU is going to be as successful as they have been, but they're still going to be very successful. But we'll find out. Time will tell. All right. Mr. 47 writes, Ready or Not was an absolute blast. Go see it. Oh, dude, I cannot wait. I was planning to go see it the other night, Mr. And I just got too busy and I kept working. I was working, looking at the clock, working. And then I just realized I'm not going to make the showtime. And I wasn't able to get down there for it, which really sucks. But I'm hearing nothing but good things about it. I've been stoked for this movie ever since I saw the trailer. So thanks for the heads up on that, Mr. I appreciate it. Mr. Oso writes, by the way, John, CGV is a Korean theater chain that I've been to in SK when I was stationed there. South Korea? When I was stationed there, I was shocked to find one in Buena Park close to home. Really? That's interesting. I don't know anything about it, but that's actually pretty cool that there's a Korean movie theater chain that is actually in California. That's interesting. I've never even heard of it, to be honest with you. At least I don't think I have off the top of my head. I don't think I have, but that's actually kind of interesting. So anyway, dude, thanks for sharing that. All right. Patrick Conway writes, it's greedy on both sides if Disney wants 50%, Sony 5%. Well, it's not greedy for Sony to only want to give them 5%. That's what Disney negotiated. It's not greedy. Remember, don't forget this. On top of that 5%, which is pure first dollar gross profit, that totally just represents nothing but pure profit. Pure profit, right? Let me actually do a quick little thing here because I can't think of it off the top of my head. Okay. So let's take, let's see. So $1.1 million, billion dollars. Times 0.05. Okay. Do you know what that 5%? Remember, Sony paid for the whole movie. They paid for everything, right? So Disney had no expenses. They had their production expenses paid for, all by Sony. Everybody got their paychecks. Everybody got paid, blah, blah, blah. And Disney, just for nothing, is getting a check cut for them for $55 million. $55 million. And on top of that, Disney has 100% of all merchandising rights. Do you know what that's worth? Do you know what 100% of merchandising rights for Spider-Man is worth? It's a lot. And they get to get this character, Spider-Man, that they don't have the rights to. And Sony lets them put Spider-Man in their other MCU movies. Everybody's forgetting about that. They're focusing on the 5%, which is still getting them $55 million just for Far From Home alone. Plus 100% of all merchandising. Sony gets none of it. Plus, they get to put that character in their other MCU movies that makes them money, and Sony gets none of that money. And this is the deal that Disney negotiated. How is it greedy for Sony to want to keep that deal? And by the way, nobody has said that Sony is only willing to keep the existing deal. Nobody said that. You know, the report in Deadline confirmed that Sony went back with several counteroffers. They're willing to come up, but they're not willing to give up production or co-financing. Nor should they ever be willing to give up co-financing, because once you do, you're giving away parts of your rights. And you cannot do that. You would be fired. If you were a studio executive and you gave into that, you would be fired the next day. No point in even coming into work. Don't bother brushing your teeth that morning, because that job is not going to be yours anymore. So I don't see how Sony going along with a deal that Disney set up is greedy on Sony's part. Not at all. Javier Rios 405 writes, I think eventually they'll renegotiate a deal with Spider-Man, maybe before D23. Dude, I seriously hope so. I think there's a possibility that can happen. I don't know how likely it is, but I think there's a possibility that can happen. I'm going to keep my fingers crossed. Suthius writes, as Biggie Smalls once said, more money, more problems. Preach, Suthius, preach. The gospel words right there, my friend. All right. Coolsome XD writes, I took my little nephew to Lion King. I really didn't like the CG or the vocal acting. Scar mainly. Oh, Scar was brilliant. Anyway, but my nephew loved it, and that's all that matters. You know what? Not everything's going to be for everybody. That's the pure subjectivity film, my brother. Is, you're going to watch a movie. One person's going to have a certain experience with it. You're going to watch it and have a different experience with it. And that's the love of the movies, man. That's the beauty of the movies. Shelley Belly writes, it's very one-sided to say Disney sabotages deal. Both parties are to blame here. 50% is too high, but 5% is too low. Yeah, but you're assuming, Shelley, that Sony insisted on keeping this at 5%. And by the way, let me remind you all again. You know why it's 5%? Because that's what Disney set up. Disney negotiated that deal. That deal that has them getting 5% and get to use Spider-Man in their other MCU movies, and they get to keep 100% of the money from that, and they get 100% of the merchandising rights. And 5% first dollar gross on any Spider-Man movies. That's the deal, not that Sony made them take. That's the deal that Disney negotiated. And Disney said, this is a great deal for Disney. And they were right. It is a great deal for Disney. But to be clear here, Sony did not insist that they just keep at 5%. They didn't. They went back to them with counteroffers and offered other stuff. And Disney said no. Not only do we want 50%, we want 50% of the co-financing rights, which means anything that happens in a Spider-Man movie from now on, Disney has half the rights to. Sony can't let that happen. No studio could ever let that happen. It would be just ridiculous. Hervé Bailly writes, I feel like we're hearing very one-sided reports, maybe leaked by one party during the negotiations. Might be more to it. I would wait for more info. I mean, look, no, obviously. That is always true, Hervé. That is always true. It is always true that you have to keep in mind that there may be information we don't know yet. Always, not just with this situation, but all you can go on when you're discussing it, all you can go on is what information do we currently have? And then later, as more information gets brought to light, well, then we reevaluate our positions on that, right? Like, you can believe one thing, and then new information comes to light, and you change your mind about that thing. That's what rational human beings do. In the light of new evidence or new facts, you should reassess what your belief on it is. And maybe it stays the same, but you should at least go through the process of reevaluating it. So that's all. You are 1,000% right. You're 1,000% right. I would just say that that's the case with everything. Form an opinion based on the information you have at hand, and always be open-minded and willing and ready to reassess your position if and when new information comes to light. That's always the case. Always the case. And it certainly is one of the cases here. Let's see. By the way, my name is Hervé. Did I say Hervé or I hope I said Hervé. French for Harvey, B.A. Well, I like it, man. I like it, Hervé. All right. Next up. Uncharted Halo writes, the best thing to come out of the Sony Disney fallout is John's Twitter rage. It was glorious and entertaining. By the way, I agree with you, John. I did go on a bit of a Twitter rage about it. It's just, look, I get particularly upset at Disney when they do stupid stuff because I am a big Disney fan. Like, look, if you take a studio that I don't care much about, like, I don't know, like, don't get me wrong, no disrespect intended whatsoever, but say like Paramount, right? I don't dislike Paramount by any stretch of the imagination, not at all. But, I wouldn't count myself as a big Paramount fan, right? So when Paramount does something stupid, I'm like, Paramount did something stupid, whatever. I get particularly worked up. Like when the Detroit Red Wings make a stupid move with their team. That's hockey for my American friends. When the Detroit Red Wings do something stupid and make a stupid move or whatever, okay, they did something stupid. But when the Toronto Maple Leafs, who I bleed blue and white, I don't talk about it hockey a lot on my show because of my American friends, but when the Toronto Maple Leafs do something dumb, oh my God, my blood boils because I care more. I am a Disney fan. I love Star Wars. I love the MCU. I love Pixar. I mean, I'm a Disney fan. So when Disney does something stupid, I get particularly raged out about it because I care more, because it's about something that I am a fan of. You know, that sounds weird. You would think, oh no, if you're really a fan, then you'll never get mad at them for anything. No, I don't believe that at all. I believe the bigger of a fan you are of something, the more you should be upset when they do something dumb. No point in getting super upset, I mean, under normal circumstances, when another team does something dumb, because you don't care. It's the other team. I don't care about that team. But when my team does something dumb, yeah, I'll call them out on it. And so you should. All fans should be that way. If you're a DC fan and DC does something stupid, you should be the ones calling them out. If you're an MCU fan and MCU does something stupid, you should be the ones calling them out. Here's the thing. You know what fake fandom is? Fake fandom is pretending like everything's great. That's fake fandom. That's artificial fandom. That's weak fandom. You know, whether it's MCU fans or DCU fans, when something's bad or something stupid or something unruly goes on with the thing that they're a fan of, and fans just go, no, everything is great, la, 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 everything's wonderful, la, 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 they're doing nothing wrong, la, 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 la. That's not fandom. That's weak. That's weak. When you're a real fan, you want what's best for the thing that you're a fan of, and you understand that criticizing the thing you're a fan of does not mean you're not a fan. It means you care more. Under certain circumstances, not always. There's obviously exceptions to that, but yeah, I raged out on Twitter. I got really pissed off because I believe what Disney has done here is beneath them. I believe what Disney has done here is beneath them. And I criticize because I care. I criticize because I care. And I really think they need to, get their mouse ears out of their ass and fix this problem. Fix this problem. So anyway, that's just me. All right. Raymond Verrata writes, after $3 billion between Endgame and Spider-Man Far From Home, it would be foolhardy to think Spider-Man would stay in the MCU. We ended up the fools. I don't know. I mean, I don't know that. I mean, honestly, I see all the reason in the world the MCU should want to still have Spider-Man, and I see all the reason in the world why Sony would still want to keep him there. They're making money in their own universe without Spider-Man being there, and they're making money in the MCU universe with Spider-Man being over there. It was the best of both worlds for Sony. They were totally happy with it. And you would think Disney would be happy too. And again, maybe they wanted a little bit more, maybe a little bit more of a cut. That's perfectly reasonable. Nothing wrong with that. I am simply, to quote Les Miserables, I am agog, I am aghast. Has Disney lost their minds at last? I've never seen them act like such jackasses. That's not the exact words for those of you who know Les Mis, but it should be good for both of them. If anything, Raymond, I gotta tell you, I think these numbers alone seem to me to suggest why they should all be making this work. They should all be damn happy. But hey, maybe I expect too much. Maybe I expect too much, my friend. All right. Patrick Conway writes, really curious about Marvel at D23 now. Oh, dude, I am dying to know. I'm going to D23. If Marvel doesn't pull my invitation for the Twitter rage I unleashed on them the other day, I am going to D23. I was already excited to see what they're going to do. Now I'm fascinated to see what's going to be talked about. Are they going to mention the Spider-Man thing from the stage at all? I got a feeling they won't. I got a feeling it's going to be one of those, and I don't know that that's a bad move either on their part, but I think it's going to be one of those things where on the stage, nobody's mentioning Spider-Man. In the audience, everybody's talking about Spider-Man. It's going to be interesting to see. Uncharted Halo writes, a third abrupt premature Spider-Man reboot and an incomplete trilogy. In other words, we will never get Spider-Man 4. Again, while certain changes to the narrative would have to be made, I believe there are ways here that you just take Peter and Aunt May with Marissa Tomei and Tom Holland, and you just continue on. And you just pretend, like, look, Highlander 3, going back a ways. I think Mario Van Peebles was in this one. You go back to Highlander 3, nobody said Highlander 3 is a reboot. It's not. You know what happened, though? It just ignored the events of Highlander 2. When you watch Highlander 3, it just pretends that nothing that happened in Highlander 2 actually ever happened. And because Highlander 2 is one of the worst motion pictures ever made. And it to a degree, it worked. So I think it's possible you can continue on without rebooting. It wouldn't necessarily work, and maybe there's a better way to do it. But I'm just saying right now, I think it is possible for them to continue on, adjust the narrative a bit, much like Highlander 3 did, ignoring Highlander 2, and just carry on with this Peter Parker, ignoring the MCU events that have happened in his life. Maybe yes, maybe no, we'll have to see. Aaron Moen writes, favorite movies from the Liam Neesons. The Liam Neesons? I love that Key and Peele sketch. Also, do you think he can recover from that BS controversy? I think he already has, to be honest with you. And it was a BS controversy. I know he has 3 small movies on the way. The problem with Neeson right now is not that controversy stuff. That's not the problem. It's not. The problem with Neeson right now is putting out a string of low quality, kind of B crappy movies. To be fair, not all of them were all that crappy either, to be fair. But like Cold Pursuit, Men in Black, nobody saw Widows. The Ballad of Buster Scruggs was actually not bad, but then again, not many people saw it. The Commuter wasn't any good. He did an appearance in the Orville. I forgot about that. And what's the other movie he did? Then you're going all the way back to like 2016 with Silence, which I actually really liked, but again, nobody saw it. So the bigger problem facing Liam Neeson right now, the bigger thing facing Liam Neeson right now is not that controversy. It's the string of movies that he's been in that hasn't been working in. Can he recover? Sure. When you're an actor of the caliber that he is, you can, but that's what he's got to face right now, is overcoming this. People now hear Liam Neeson movie. You're not thinking like you were 5 or 6 years ago, oh, this is going to be good. Now you're thinking, oh, the guy who makes those crappy movies. That's the part he's got to overcome. Can he? Yes, he can. Will he? We'll have to wait and see. Juan Mija writes, me, Stark, I don't feel so good. Yeah. I think that's a lot of people, man. I think that's a lot of people. We want to see this get fixed. We want to see this get resolved, Juan. You're not alone. You and me, brother. Krypton Cage writes, Ed Kepner versus Mr. Philosopher, who would win? Honestly, Ed Kepner, I'm drawing a blank onto who it is, to be honest with you. I cannot remember. Sorry about that, man. QS Hicks writes, what in the name of Mickey Mouse's left nipple is going on here? I blame Disney, but the thought of Sony moving forward with the IP is sad. Look, between Spidey 2 and Spideyverse was 14 years of crap. I disagree. I will firmly stand by this. I believe that, hold on a second. The Amazing Spider-Man, Rotten Tomatoes. I think the first Amazing Spider-Man, quite frankly, was really quite good. I thought the 2012 Spider-Man, by the way, 72% critic rating, 77% audience rating. The first Amazing Spider-Man is quite good. I like it. I think it's a good movie. Is it as good as Spider-Man 2? No. But I think it's quite good. Unfortunately, right before that, you had Spider-Man 3, which is not all that good. And then really unfortunately, after the first Amazing Spider-Man, you got the Amazing Spider-Man 2, which was also not that good. That's too bad too. But what was the last one they did? The best Spider-Man movie ever made, Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse. I contend that Sony is 4 out of 6. I think on the good side, the first Spider-Man, Spider-Man 2, which is also one of the great comic book movies ever. The first Amazing Spider-Man and Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse, which is definitely also a top 10 comic book movie ever made. And I think the best Spider-Man movie ever made, including better than Homecoming and Far From Home. Easily. And they did that on their own. So are they batting 1,000? No. Have they made a couple of bad ones? Yeah, they have. But that's no reason why they should give up their rights. That's no reason they should give up their rights. So, yeah. Look, the first Amazing Spider-Man, I contend, was good. Critics liked it. Audiences liked it. It's a good movie. That doesn't mean you have to like it. But unfortunately, like you're pointing out, before that was Spider-Man 3, after it was The Amazing Spider-Man 2. That's unfortunate. But at least the last one we got from Sony was the greatest Spider-Man movie of all time. So, it's a little bit of a gamble, but every studio is. But I think 4 out of 6 really isn't bad. If Fox only had that ratio with their X-Men movies. Krypton Cage writes, did you read Sony's tweets on the Spidey deal? The end of the second 2 out of 3 tweet was such a burn. By the way, who the fuck negotiates from 5% to 50%? OFC, it backfired. Now, it's not only 5% to 50%. They also wanted 50%. And this is the part that everybody ignores. They wanted 50% of the co-production, of the co-financing rights. Now, again, to the uninformed, it's, oh, so Disney's offering to put up some of the money to make them. Isn't that something that would be good for Sony? No, because it means you're giving up the rights. It means you're giving up a portion of the rights. And that is disastrous. You cannot do that. And and you're right, Krypton, it backfired. Sir Ivan Bennett. And we already covered this one in the show earlier today. Thanks for sending that in, Sir Ivan. Goalie Gar writes, what about the contract that guaranteed a third MCU Spider-Man movie if Far From Home hit $1 billion? Would Sony be breaching that contract? No, it gives Disney the option. It gives Disney the option to be the production studio of another standalone Spider-Man movie. If that report, for those of you who don't know what Goalie's talking about, there was a story that came out a little while ago. In one of the more reputable trades, saying that there was a stipulation in the Sony Marvel deal that if Spider-Man Far From Home hit the $1 billion mark at the box office, it would trigger a clause in the contract that would allow Disney the option to produce one more. Disney may simply not want to do that, right? Disney may simply not want to do that. And if that's the case, then no, Sony's not in breach. So it's an option. Now you have to ask yourself the question, does Disney want, because remember, if Disney uses that option, if Disney takes their option to make one more, that one more would be under the terms of the original deal, which is 100% of the marketing or merchandising rights, able to use Spider-Man in another MCU film, and 5%. So the question is, if Disney says they're unhappy with those terms now, why would they trigger a clause in the contract to do one more under those terms? Right? It's like saying this. You paint my house every week and it takes you like 40 hours to do it. And I pay you $2. I pay you $2 to paint my house. You hate that. You hate it. Now, in the contract, it says, you have to do it 5 times and then you have an option to do it for a 6th time. So you finish doing it for the 5th time and now you have the option. I can go back and paint his house again for $2. Are you going to take advantage of that option or are you going to decline that option? You'll probably decline the option. If Disney is terribly unhappy now with the terms of the agreement that they negotiated, why would they take advantage of that option? They're going to decline the option. And if they decline the option, then it's not Sony being in breach. It's just Disney declining the option to do that extra movie. So anyway, there's that. QS Hicks writes, in my best Tommy Wiseau voice, you're tearing me apart, Disney. This is terrible news. Disney, why couldn't you leave well enough alone? And again, look, I think this goes back to the thing, QS, of nobody's blaming Disney for wanting more. Why not? You've done a great job. The contract's coming to an end. Why not ask for a little bit of a sweeter deal for the next round of contracts? Nothing wrong with that. Nobody's blaming for that. But they asked for too much. They're asking for more, and they're just asking the other guy to bend over and lube up his cornhole. That's a big difference. They wanted them to give up financing rights. They wanted them to give up 10 times more of the box office, and they were getting 10 times more, and they wanted to keep 100% of marketing rights or merchandising rights, and they wanted to keep the rights to use them in other MCU movies that they keep 100% of the money for and don't give any to Sony. It's too much. It was ridiculous. Harry Mudd writes, hello, Rob, Chris. Thanks for the tip. Cannon Busters. Love that show. I've never heard of Cannon Busters. Did they bring that up here? I don't even remember it. Obviously, Rob and Chris are not here right now, but I got to look into that. What is Cannon Busters? QS Hicks writes, I feel like Feige went into the Sony meeting like, I've come here to chew bubblegum and kick ass, and I'm all out of bubblegum. Not sure. He didn't get what he wanted. Look, and I guarantee you Kevin Feige had nothing to do with those negotiations. Kevin Feige had nothing to do with those negotiations. That's not what he does. That's not what he's there for. This was handled by Alan Horn and his team. They had nothing to do with Kevin Feige. Harry Mudd writes, Chris, have you seen Forest of Piano, by the way? Nice one. I've not, obviously Chris isn't here right now. I've not heard of it personally, but I'll run that by her. Jay Meister 25 writes, I can understand Disney wanting a bigger slice of the pie. Wasn't it their production budgets? What did Sony financially contribute to the movies? No, Sony paid everything. Sony paid for the whole kit and caboodle, as they say. By the way, guys, apologize for the background noise, but it's getting a little hot in here. I need to turn on the AC, so forgive me for that. Sony paid for everything. Sony was the 100% financer of the movies. So Marvel produced it, but they did it all with money that Sony gave them. So Sony was 100% the financer of those movies. Harry Mudd writes, had birthday yesterday, turned 47, man, I'm old. Happy birthday to you, Harry. I hope you had a fabulous day, and I hope you have a great year ahead of you, my friend. All right. Ryan Lorna writes, very curious how The Crown will handle Prince Andrew, given certain recent events. It's kind of the same problem you're always saying with Michael Jackson, the Michael Jackson movie would be. Yeah, it is. Well, first of all, I got to say, The Crown is not my kind of show, but I love it. You know, I got hooked into The Crown because I had no desire or intention of watching it, but Anne was watching it all the time. She fell in love with it, so it was always on. And so, you know, inevitably, I'm sitting there in the living room while she's got it on, and I start to watch it a bit. And it's like, wow, this is actually pretty good. And then I watch it again. It's like, wow, this is really good. And before I know it, I'm asking Anne, hey, do you want to put on The Crown? And she's like, really? The Crown's a great show, man. It's a great show. And they've now done a cast changeover. We no longer have Claire Foy as Her Majesty Queen Elizabeth, which is going to be really weird. It's going to be really weird not having her as the queen, but I understand they're fast forwarding a big number of years in the life of Elizabeth. And so they got a different actress to play her now, and a different actor is going to be playing Andrew. And yeah, man, it's going to be interesting to see how they deal with that and what they're going to do with it. So we'll see. We'll see. But I'm very, very curious to see it come back for that reason amongst many, because I really just dig the show, Ryan. Keenan Haynes writes, if Marvel is willing to put up 50% of the production and marketing costs, that they're not willing to put up 50% of the marketing costs. That's still Sony because they're the distributor. They should receive 50% of the profits. The contract was for 5 Spidey film appearances. That's what we got. Here's the problem, Keenan. Of course, if Disney puts up 50% of the production costs, of course they should get 50% of that. But that's an unbalanced ledger. There's a reason Sony does not want Disney to become a financer. Because once you become a financer, you hold some of the rights. If you pay for it, you hold some of the rights. And Sony doesn't want to give up what? Oh, good. Disney's going to put up $70 million. Yay. And take $350 million of the profits. Why would Sony agree to that? Why would Sony like that? There's no way. And again, everybody is forgetting that once you get a co-financing deal, you now own some of the rights. Or at least you may not own some of the rights, but you are now granted some of the rights to that. You hold certain rights over that property now. And Sony cannot allow that to happen. When you oversimplify it and say, hey, if Marvel's willing to put up 50%, they should get 50%. Sure. Yes. But why would Sony agree to that? They shouldn't agree to that. They should never, ever, ever agree to sign any co-financing deal with Disney, because once you sign a co-financing deal, you are giving up some of your rights to the character. The reason Sony pays for everything is because that means they don't give up any of their rights. They still have total control over the character. And Disney doesn't just want box office percentage. They want some of the control over the character. And Sony cannot give that up. No studio would give that up. That would be insanity to do that. And they're not going to do it. There's no way they're going to do it. Da298 writes, 50-50 bad deal for Sony with few big franchises. I mean, look, even if it was just talking about the box office and not co-financing rights, which is really what Disney wants, is the co-financing rights. The extra money doesn't hurt. But even if it was just the money, you're right. Why would Sony give up 50% of their biggest franchise? That's lunacy. Absolute lunacy. Especially when Disney is keeping 100% of the merchandising rights and they're keeping 100% of the box office for the movies that Spider-Man appears in. What kind of idiot would take that deal? What type of moron would agree to a deal like that? Oh yeah, we'll split it 50-50 and you get to keep 100% of the merchandising and you get to keep 100% of the box office in the other movies that our character appears in. Who would agree to that? That's nuts. That's absolutely idiocy. No way they should do that. Keenan Haynes writes, how many billion-dollar hits does Sony have? How many Disney, Marvel, X-Men, Fantastic Four coming? Disney, Marvel will be okay. Hope they work it out. Oh, no, absolutely. But Sony doesn't need them to be billion-dollar hits. Every single Spider-Man movie that Disney's had has gotten relatively close to $1 billion. The one that made the least amount of money made over 700. Seriously, here's the thing. Let's go over to Box Office Mojo here for a second. Spider-Man movies box office. Okay. Let's take a look at this. Spider-Man movies at the box office. The movie that made the least amount of money was The Amazing Spider-Man 2, made $708 million. That's the least successful one they did. $708 million at the box office was the least amount they did. All right. The original Spider-Man made $821 million. The second Spider-Man made $783 million. Spider-Man 3 made $890 million. $890 million. The Amazing Spider-Man made $757 million. The Amazing Spider-Man 2 made $708 million. It's not like, see, people keep talking as if Sony's Spider-Man movies made like $100 million. People keep talking as if Sony's Spider-Man movies, where they kept everything, made only made about $350 million. No! The least successful movie they did was $708 million. I mean, it's really not that. And you're right. Look, Sony will be fine. Marvel will be fine. Neither one of them need to make this deal happen, but they should make this deal happen. Because while both of them will be fine, it would be better for both of them if they got together and made a deal. Without the deal, they'll both be fine. Venom is proved. Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse is proved. Sony doesn't need Marvel. The MCU, being in the state that it's in, has proven they don't need Sony. They don't need to have Spider-Man. They'll both be fine. But they'd both be better off if they did have this deal. And that's kind of the bottom line for me. R Squared Games writes, Disney is in the wrong here, but remember when you called everyone idiots for thinking if Venom did well, Sony wouldn't re-up the deal. No. I said the opposite. I said if Venom does well. Oh, anyway, sorry, let me rephrase that. But I was right. Here's the thing, R Squared. I was right. Sony totally wanted to re-up the deal. I was 100% right. Because remember, I said before, a bunch of people, when Venom was coming out, people were going, let's hope Venom fails so that Sony doesn't take Spider-Man back. And I'm like, idiots. If Venom fails, then Sony will have no choice but to take Spider-Man back because they can't make their own universe work without Spider-Man. If Venom works, then that gives Sony confidence to leave him in the MCU because they'll be making money without Spider-Man here and they're making money with Spider-Man over there. It's a win-win for Sony. And Sony, exactly like I said would happen, wanted to keep this deal. They wanted to leave Spider-Man in the MCU. Make no mistake about it. Sony wanted to stay in this deal. They wanted to keep Spider-Man in the MCU. The problem is Disney sabotaged it by coming in and making outrageous demands of being given co-financing rights, which is ridiculous, wanting 50%, which is ridiculous, all while keeping 100% of the merchandising and 100% of the box office of the other movies that Spider-Man appears in. Disney sabotaged this. My claim that Sony would want to keep Spider-Man in the MCU if Venom worked was 100% correct. 100% correct. It's just that none of us thought Disney were going to come along and sabotage it. I certainly didn't think Disney was going to come along and sabotage it. Nobody else probably thought Disney was going to come along and sabotage it, but Disney came along and sabotaged it. Sony wanted to keep him in there. That's why I get frustrated when I see people writing, why Sony takes Spider-Man? They didn't. Disney axed the deal. Disney undermined the deal. This is on Disney, guys. It's not on Sony. Anyway, Mike Jones, we got to Mike Jones's comment on the live show earlier today. Thanks again, Mike Jones, for such a very generous super chat. Thank you for sending that in, brother. Anthony Cullen writes, Feige, I lost the kid. Bob Iger, Kevin, we lost. That's really good. I like that. I mean, somebody else mentioned the Kevin Feige saying, I lost a kid, but Bob Iger, that's a nice little added. Kevin, we lost. I like that. Sheepdog117 writes, how can they be jamming us if they don't know we're coming? From my favorite segment in all of Star Wars. I'll tell you what, that space battle scene to this day, the space battle scene in Return of the Jedi to this day is the single greatest space battle scene ever in the history of motion pictures. Not even in the prequels, with all the new technology, didn't come close. The space battle in Return of the Jedi, greatest space battle in the history of motion pictures. Anyway, I'm glad. Thanks for bringing that up, Sheepdog. All right, Harry Mudd writes, I recommend Manhunt, Unabomber on Netflix. It's a true story about Ted Kaczynski. I've seen, let me rephrase, I didn't see it, but I've seen that listed before. And I've seen that one mentioned before. And that is one, this true crime stuff my wife is kind of addicted to the true crime stuff, but I have an interest in it as well. That sounds interesting. I am going to have to keep my eye open for that one because I think I'd like to check that one out sometime, Harry. Thanks for the recommendation. Chris Hamilton writes, on the bright side, no more Iron Man Jr. Well, that's true. You know, all day today, I've been trying to look for the silver linings in all this BS. And you're right. One of the silver linings, no more Iron Man Jr. Cody Howard writes, will they reboot? They might, but I don't think they have to. If so, I don't think I can handle. Andrew was my favorite Spidey, but Tom has done magnificently. It's just annoying, honestly. But remember, I would say remember this. First of all, I don't think they will reboot. They might, but I don't think they will. They still have Tom Holland under contract for one more. Remember, when they were moving off of the first Spider-Man into the second one, okay? We were moving from Maguire into Andrew Garfield. Everybody said before we saw Andrew Garfield, Tobey Maguire's Spider-Man, man. I can't imagine anybody else being Spider-Man. And then Andrew Garfield came along and everybody's like, well, shit, he's actually pretty good Spider-Man. Now, Amazing Spider-Man 2 wasn't so good, but you know, Andrew Garfield was a really good Spider-Man. And then when they pulled the plug on that storyline and they were rebooting, a lot of people were going, no, we can't. You got to bring back Andrew Garfield. It's got to be Andrew Garfield. And I loved Andrew Garfield. But what they do, they bring in this kid, Tom Holland. And now all of us love Tom Holland. If they recast again, and I don't think they will, but if they do, before we panic, we all need to remember Everybody thought the world was ending when it wasn't going to be Maguire anymore. And then we got Andrew Garfield. Then everybody thought the world was ending when we weren't going to be Andrew Garfield. And then we got Tom Holland. They'll get another really good Spider-Man if they move on. But I don't think we have to worry about that because I think they're going to keep Tom Holland. Anthony Cullen writes, you got to feel a bit sad for Sony with all the hate they're getting. It's not all their fault. It's not show friends, it's show business, right, Rob? Oh, absolutely. And I would go one step further. It's not only not all Sony's fault, it is all Disney's fault. I'm the Disney fan in the room. And I'm telling y'all, this is all Disney's fault. 100% Disney's fault. The original deal was a deal that Disney negotiated. You want a little bit more? That's fine. You don't come in demanding co-financing right, 50% of box office, while keeping 100% of the merchandising, while keeping 100% of the box office of other movies that Spider-Man appears in. That's BS. This is, hear me clearly, this is 100% Disney's fault. There is no, unless you're a blind fanboy going, no, I love Disney. Everything Disney does is so great. Unless you're one of those people, there is no rational way to look at what we've got here, to look at the situation and not clearly see the pure obviousness of it, that this is Disney's fault. And it's so blatantly obvious, I have to wonder, I'm not saying I believe this, I'm just saying I can't help but wonder if Disney didn't intentionally sabotage this. Like, Disney's got to know. They got to know what they were proposing no studio in the world would have agreed to. Well, if they know that, why did they do it? The only thing I'm left to wonder is because they intentionally wanted to sabotage the deal. Again, I'm not saying I actually believe that, but I can't help but wonder. Can't help but wonder. And meanwhile, all the fanboys are running around going, this is Sony's fault. This is Sony's fault. How can you possibly say this is Sony's fault? Because Disney's the best. This is Sony's fault. This is Sony's fault. How? Look at the facts. How can you possibly say this is Sony's? Are you actually saying any company in their right mind would give away co-financing rights, 50% of box office, 100% of merchandising, and 100% of the box office of the other movies that your character appears in? You think any other studio would do that? I don't care. They should just let Disney do whatever they want to do. It's frustrating for me as a fan. Because I am a Disney fan. Everybody knows it. Hell, there are people out there who will constantly till their grave say that I'm on Disney's payroll. I am a Disney fan. But even I will tell you, look, it's clear, it's obvious. This is 100% Disney's fault. And it's going to be up to them to make this right. So hopefully they do. We'll have to wait and see. This is Sony's fault. Anyway, let's see. Stubborn McShave writes, do you think Spider-Man news was leaked to apply pressure in the negotiations before D23? Also, if deal goes south, what happens to Spider-Man ride in Marvel Land? Theme park rides are a totally separate thing. The theme park stuff is a completely different thing. So that has nothing to do with anything. I don't know. No, I don't think so. Honestly, this doesn't put any more pressure on anybody just because D23 is coming. It really doesn't. So no, honestly, Stubble, I don't think that has anything to do with it. In my personal opinion, I don't think it has anything to do with it. Ash here writes, do you think Scoot McNairy will appear in Shang-Chi? Why would Scoot McNairy? Like Scoot McNairy from Burn Notice and Batman vs Superman? Am I missing something? I'm probably missing something. Holland Love writes, don't let Feige not producing Spider-Man movies, not Spider-Man out of the MCU, distract you from the real issue. J Fox, K Holmes split up, hashtag smoke screen. I'll tell you what, I've heard a few people saying that Katie Holmes and Jamie Foxx broke up. This is how much I don't care about this type of stuff. I never even knew they were a couple. I had no idea that they were a couple. I really didn't. Let's see. I had no idea that Jamie Foxx and Katie Holmes, they were a couple. Apparently they were a couple for a while. How long were they together? I got to see this. I got to pull this up. How long were they together? Look here. Now, the alleged reason the thing at the Oscar winner cited Fox is just, okay, whatever. This is how little I care about this paparazzi crap. I never even knew that they were a couple. I'll leave it at that. Okay. H. James 78 writes, whoever thinks making movies isn't about money, well, this Sony/Disney Spider-Man mess throws that out the window. I've always tell people say, they just made that movie for the money. Newsflash. Every movie ever made in Hollywood was made for the money. It's the movie business. Why do you think Ford makes cars? Each car they make is to hopefully make money. That's why they make cars. Why does Guess make blue jeans? Well, they hope to make money with every blue jean that they make. They don't always do it, but that's the hope. Why do you think Campbell's make soup? They make the soup in the hopes of making money. Why do you think a movie studio makes a movie? They make them in the hopes of making money. They're all to make money, my friends. Make no mistake about it. And that's not necessarily a bad thing, but that is the way it is. Let's see. Ryan Albanese writes, drove 3 hours to see Whiplash in 2014 and got rear-ended on the way. My adrenaline was pumping, and the movie kept it going. Great theater experience, though I can't recommend Whiplash before Whiplash. Really, you had to drive 3 hours. Granted, you got to go see an Academy Award-winning performance by J.K. Simmons, which is always good. And Miles Teller is fantastic in that movie as well. You had to drive 3 hours to go see that movie? Dude, I'll tell you what, unless it's a Star Wars movie or a big DC or a big Marvel movie, I don't know that I'm driving 3 hours to watch anything. That is some film fandom dedications right there, dude. But that sucks that you got hit on the way there. Being in college, jazz band, and having an evil section leader only added to the experience. So you could say what they call in the business relatability. You were able to relate to the experience. That's funny. Okay, that explains a lot because let's say, look, I'm into playing Star Wars, the role-playing game. If there was a movie about a group of people playing Star Wars, the role-playing game, and it was only playing in a movie theater 3 hours away, you know what? Then maybe I do. Then maybe I do get in the car and make that drive. I'm not 1,000% sure that I do, but maybe I do. So, okay. So that sheds a whole lot more light on the situation, Ryan. Thanks for sharing the story, man. That's some dedication still right there. I like that. Eli Gray writes, Patreon supporter. Oh, thank you so much for being a Patreon supporter, Eli. Looking into the Sony/Disney situation, it's on Sony and Tom Rothman. Amy Pascal's pro MCU and Feige and Spidey could end up with Avi Arad again, ready for Spider-Verse with all three actors. Well, no, this isn't on Sony. This is 100% on Disney. Disney is the one who came in with a radically outrageous, unrealistic demands. Co-financing rights? I don't think so. 50% of the box office? I don't think so. All while keeping 100% of the merchandising rights and 100% of the box office for the other movie Spider-Man, who is Sony's character, appears in? No. This isn't on Sony. There's no rational way to look at this to say, unless it's pure fanboyism, there's no rational way to look at this and see it for anything other than it being 100% on Disney. This is 100% on Disney. Anyway, that's the way I say it. And it doesn't matter if it ends up with Avi Arad or if it ends up with Uwe Boll. Doesn't matter. That doesn't change the right and wrong about the demands Disney's placing on it. It can change what we prefer as the outcome, but it doesn't change the rationality or lack thereof of the situation and the position and the demands that Disney is putting everything in. It's completely irrational and completely unreasonable. And therefore, since it's Disney that's acting irrationally and unreasonably, this is on them. This is on them. So, I mean, that's just the way I see it, man. That's just the way I see it. As a big Disney fan, as a big Marvel fan, that's the way I see it, that this is all on them. This is 100% on them. Anyway, Sharan Aurora writes, this could work in Sony's favor, maybe. Him being separated makes him more special. That's true. Disney totally effed this up. How much more money do you want? I mean, again, it's not just the money. It's the co-financing rights. I mean, even without the co-financing rights, 50% is unreasonable. Why would any studio give up 50% of the box office to their biggest property? It would be stupid. It would be absolutely stupid. Especially when the other company, again, gets 100% of the merchandising rights and 100% of the box office of the other films your character appears in. That's totally irrational, totally unreasonable. And maybe, look, somebody brought up today, maybe in the midst of all this, there's a little bit of a silver lining. Like maybe we get to see Venom and Spider-Man together now. Okay. Maybe we could now see Tom Holland and Tom Hardy in the same movie together as Venom and Spider-Man. I would still rather have Spider-Man in the MCU, but if I've got to look for a little bit of a silver lining, that could be one of them. All right. Go talk to your local Army recruiter. Kevin Brown writes, the world hates Sony right now. I almost guarantee Disney leaked these discussions to Deadline to put pressure on Sony to make a deal. It's possible because here's the thing. Disney knows they have blindly loyal followers. And by blindly loyal, I mean, it doesn't matter what BS Disney pulls, people will support Disney. I am a follower of Disney, but I'm not a blind follower of Disney. You put out shit like Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., I'll call it shit. You put out a bad movie like Wrinkle in Time, I'm going to call it a bad movie. You put out garbage like Iron Fist, I'm going to call it garbage. You pull a stunt like this, and I ain't just going to go, well, I'm a Disney fan, so I got to support it no matter what. No. This is some BS. I'm a fan of Disney, but as a fan of Disney, I think fans of Disney are more responsible to call Disney on their BS. If you're really a fan, you need to be the first one to stand up to call them on their BS. And this is BS. This is some pure BS right here. So you're right. Disney is counting on the fact that they have blindly loyal followers who will just parrot whatever they want Disney to have them say. I'm not saying that everybody's like that. I'm not at all. I'm just saying, I'm sure you agree that amongst all the Disney fans, of which I am one, there is a segment that are blindly loyal to Disney. That'll just say, it's whatever Disney does is magnificent and right and pure and holy. Yeah, but they just they just put out a video of Bob Iger and Alan Horn clubbing baby seals to death with their golf clubs. That didn't really happen, by the way. Just an example. The Disney fans will go, well, those baby cubs those baby seals probably had it coming. Yeah. The babies, yeah, but what Bob Iger and Alan Horn did was right because those baby seals probably had it coming. That's what the Disney fans would say. A certain segment of the Disney fans would say. Not all of them. Not most of them. I'm a Disney fan. I wouldn't say that. But there is a segment of Disney fandom that is blindly loyal, that will rationalize and justify anything that Disney does, no matter what. And every fandom has that segment. DC has that segment of fans. Harry Potter has that segment of fans. Star Wars has that segment of fans. You know, I'm a Star Wars fan. I'll tell you the stuff about Star Wars I don't like. I think there are some seasons of Rebels that weren't the best. I don't like Clone Wars. I don't like the prequels. I mean, you name it. I'll talk about the things I don't think are good about Star Wars. But within Star Wars, there's a segment of fans that will justify and will justify anything that Star Wars says. And we're seeing that enforced right now. We are seeing Disney knowing they have that certain segment of blind loyalty. And they're just trusting them to back them up no matter how irrational or unreasonable Disney is being. There are an army of people that will stand by them, just like DC has them, just like Star Wars has them, just like Harry Potter has them, whatever. They're out there. It's a part of it. It's just that Disney's leveraging that. And I don't like it. I don't like that they're doing that. Anyway, Mike Jones writes, Should Sony hire Kevin Feige's protege, Nate Moore, who produced Civil War and Black Panther? Look, any studio should always hire talent. They should always hire talent. Just because you're Kevin Feige's protege doesn't mean, look, just because Kevin Feige's a great producer doesn't mean he's a great mentor. Right? Just because he's a great producer doesn't mean he's a great mentor. But look, the basic answer to your question is all studios should always look to hire talented people. And if he's one of them, then sure, they should hire him. Why not? Suthius writes, I just read updated news. Sony is disappointed that Feige won't produce the next movie. Telltale sign that Feige likely will depart the MCU soon then? No. I don't think that's the case. Look, I think Feige within the next X number of years, between 3 and 5 years, I think Feige leaves the MCU. Not because he's unhappy, but because he's accomplished everything that you can possibly accomplish. There is no bigger mountain for him to conquer that he hasn't already conquered doing at the MCU. He at some point is going to be looking for new creative challenges, as any artist and people who crave to improve themselves would. So at some point, I think he's going to leave. I think within the next 3 to 5 years. But something like this, no, I don't think this is going to, it won't have anything to do. When Kevin Feige leaves Marvel, it will have nothing to do with him being unhappy or anything. He's going to leave totally thrilled with Marvel, totally happy being worked there. He just needs new creative challenges. And at some point, you got to move on from Disney to be able to do that. Once you've already conquered the biggest mountains you possibly can, what's bigger? Fantastic Four? That's not a bigger mountain than making and producing the #1 box office film of all time. It's a good little challenge, but it's nothing like the challenges he's already conquered there. He needs new challenges, and I think he'll take advantage of that at some point. All right. Preston Walden writes, part of the journey is the end. End of Iron Man, end of Iron Man Jr., poetic in a certain way. Guess it is, although this was a shorter journey than Iron Man's. Iron Man Jr.'s journey was a little bit shorter, but again, I'm going to hold out hope that cooler heads at Disney and Sony will prevail, and it's somehow, some way, a deal will get done. Here's hoping. James Rel 22 writes, to bring Star Wars into this, the negotiations were short. I mean, they obviously were longer than this, but Star Wars quotes add flavor. You're right. Now, apparently, what I'm reading now is that the negotiations and the deal making has actually been going on longer than we think. They've actually been going on for a while. And you're right. Adding a Star Wars quote into it always spices it up just a little bit. All right, next up here. I understand why Disney would want a bigger cut to justify Feige dedicating time and resources at Marvel that could go into a film they owe outright, but 50% is beyond ridiculous. And again, once again here, Samuel, it's not just 50%, which by itself is unreasonable. They also want co-financing rights and keeping merchandising and keeping all the box office for other movies Sony's spots. When you really add it all together, it's not just a bad deal. It's ludicrous. It's absolutely ludicrous what they were asking for. Samuel follows up and writes, Disney messed up so hard you'd think they were trying to win a trade war with China. But listen, seriously, again, it brings up to the point that it's such a ludicrous thing they're proposing. I have to at least suspect a little bit that maybe they intentionally sabotaged this. Maybe they wanted to bust this deal without just coming right out to their fans and saying, we're just pulling out of the Spider-Man deal. Now they have this artificial way to blame Sony. I know we just couldn't come to a deal because you offered a ludicrous deal that nobody in the right mind would accept. Simple writes, have you seen Jerry Tenner's post about Spider-Man? I don't even know who Jerry Tenner is, to be honest with you. Mike Thompson writes, guess Uncle Ben's getting shot again soon. You know what? I don't think you need to go over the origin story again. I think you can just bring Tom Holland right on over and just pick it up and just ignore the events of the previous MCU films, just the way that Highlander 3 completely ignored the events of Highlander 2. I think you can do it. I'm not saying it would work necessarily. I'm not even saying it might be the best idea. I'm just saying I think it's possible to do it. Have to wait and see. Simple writes, damn autocorrect. I obviously mean Renner. Oh, Jeremy Renner's post about Spider-Man. Yeah, to be honest, look, huge Jeremy Renner fan. Have been for years. Love Jeremy Renner. So much so Hold on a second here. I really do. First of all, the dude's an incredible talent. He's an absolute incredible talent. I love watching him in just about everything that he's in. The guy's a god. But for those of you who didn't see the post that he's talking about, Jeremy Renner basically getting involved in something he shouldn't be involved in. And he basically puts out this fan service tweet saying, Sony, give Spider-Man back to Marvel, which is just an idiotic thing to say. But I am a big fan of Jeremy. Clearly, I'm a big fan of Jeremy. Some people said I look like Jeremy's in that picture. I look like Jeremy's more out of shape brother in that picture, which is totally clear. But yeah, I'm a big fan of Jeremy, but that was actually a pretty stupid thing. To be frank with you, it was a pretty stupid thing for him to tweet. It's all that's doing is fan servicing. It's just fan servicing and doing like a band on a stage going, "What's up, Chicago?" It's a cheap pop. What that was Jeremy, who I love. I love Jeremy Renner, but that was him doing cheap pop fan service right there. That's all it was. And I think it was very ill-advised. But anyway, let's see. Anthony Cullen writes, how was Ready or Not? Should I go see it? I didn't get a chance to go see it the other day. I got too busy and I missed the showtime. But I'm getting lots of people writing into the show telling me it's actually really good, and I can't wait to see it, Anthony. Nerd Guy writes, so what happens to the rights of Night Monkey? Some people were joking earlier, Nerd Guy, that Disney should just go ahead and make Night Monkey. But actually, they can't. Because Night Monkey was introduced in a Sony-financed movie, which means Night Monkey technically belongs to Sony. That's why you can't give up co-production rights or co-financing rights. Cinema Survey Movie Reviews writes, Sony, you get 5%. MCU, we want 50. No compromise? Well, no. Sony did go back. Keep this in mind, guys. There's this lie going around that Sony never offered a counter deal. Yes, they did. Read the original Deadline article. They went back several times with various counter offers, and Disney dismissed all of them. So no compromise. Ask Disney. It seems to be on Disney here. Coolsome XD writes, Disney, we have a monopoly. Sony, we have a Spider-Man. There you go. So I'll see how it goes. Jerry Manian writes, Disney went to the dark side. I hope they reach a compromise. Love the show. Erin was great yesterday. She was. Can't wait to see your Star Wars game videos. Oh yeah. So we're playing a Star Wars role-playing game right now. We're going to be filming and showing some of it on the YouTube channel. Keep your eyes open for that. And Erin is great, isn't she, man? She's absolutely great. Thanks for pointing that out, dude. All right, Woody writes, MCU doesn't need Spidey to survive, and Sony doesn't need MCU to survive. So what's the big deal? No, it's true. It's damn true. And actually, on the next John Campea show, we're going to be talking about that specifically. Fact is, Marvel doesn't need Spider-Man. And the fact is, Sony doesn't need Marvel. Again, the best Spider-Man movies were made by Sony. The best ones were made by Sony. And no Sony Spider-Man live action film ever made under $700 million. With those numbers, you'd have to be a fool to say Sony needs Marvel. They don't. Marvel doesn't need Spider-Man either. But what I would suggest, what I would propose is that it would be better for Marvel to have Spider-Man in the MCU, and it would be better for Sony to have Marvel working with them. Do either of them need each other? No, probably not. But would it be better if they did? I would suggest they do. Dalton Burdett writes, I feel bad for Tom Holland, but I'm glad he hasn't said anything publicly. Anything he says would not be good for him. No, you're right. Anything he says right now would be blown back in his face. If he said anything that sounded like he supported Sony, the Disney fanboys would go nuts. If he said anything that sounded like he was supporting Disney in this, that would blow up in his face too. There is nothing he could say. Fact of the matter is, he's still got one film on his deal, and he'll probably still be Spider-Man for at least one more film. And then he'll probably re-sign for more. So I feel bad for Tom Holland, but at the same time, I think at the end of the day, this isn't going to affect him too much. I really think at the end of the day, when you really look at it, I don't think this is going to affect him too much one way or the other. Patrick O'Connell writes, John, I agree Disney asking 50-50 was too much. The only way I could see this as a somewhat fair open negotiation ask is if the plan is to make 3 Sony/Marvel, Spidey, Venom, etc. produced movies per year. But again, it's not just the 50-50. It's they want co-financing rights. And once you get into like for remember we said a second ago, we were talking about Night Monkey. Night Monkey as a concept belongs to Sony, because it was in a Spider-Man movie completely financed by Sony. Therefore, the rights to that character, Night Monkey, or even the name Night Monkey, belongs to Sony. This is just as an example, okay? If Disney had been a co-financer, then they would have some of those rights. Sony cannot sacrifice the rights. That's the most valuable thing here is the rights. They cannot give up even a portion of those rights. Money is one thing, but rights is another thing entirely. And that's where it gets really, really messy, buddy. All right, Murray Reich writes, with the recent Sony-Disney deal fallout, do you think this will hurt Disney at D23 with the audience or no? Honestly, no, I don't think so. Because what's going to happen, I believe, and I'm going to be there, is on the stage, no mention of Spider-Man. In the audience, everybody's talking about Spider-Man. And nary the two shall meet. I don't think they're going to bring it up at all. Now, maybe I'm wrong. Maybe Bob Iger comes out with a stool and sits down and says, guys, let's talk about the Spider-Man situation here. And addresses it for a half hour. But I've got a feeling, to be honest with you, that they're not going to bring it up at all. I don't think Spider-Man's going to get mentioned at all. Patrick O'Connell writes, 3 Sony/Disney movies a year. I'm not quite sure what that's a reference to. Sorry about that, man. Noel Nguyen writes, MCU can cast Tom Holland as Night Monkey. No, because Night Monkey belongs to Sony because Sony financed that film, so they have all the rights to all the new characters in it. Murray Reich writes, now all that event that happened to Spider-Man in post-credit sequence is now a cliffhanger. Yeah, they're never going to get around to it now. Now, granted, Sony can use J. Jonah Jameson. If Sony wants to make another Spider-Man movie with Tom Holland, they can bring J.K. Simmons in. It's their movie. J.K.'s their character. They can totally do that. Just saying. Just saying. All right, ZMG Ruler writes, will they call him Iron Man Jr. in edited MCU films? No, they probably just won't reference him at all. Or they might just, you know what they could do? They could just say the kid. You know, what about the kid? He's dropped off the radar. Yeah, that's all they have to do, right? All they have to do, just refer to him quickly as the kid. Could be done. But it would be, I would get a kick out of ZMG Ruler if they actually did say Iron Man Jr. Corey Green writes, hey, do you think Disney just keeps him on TV? Well, they can't. They can't. They cannot do a live action Spider-Man. They can do animated Spider-Man on TV, but what they cannot do is a live action Spider-Man on TV, nor can they do an animated Spider-Man movie. What they can do is animated Spider-Man on TV, and that's the limit of it. Robert Johnson writes, Disney offered Sony a crappy deal, but if Venom had flopped, do you think Sony would have been confident enough to walk away from that crappy deal? Here's the thing. If Venom had flopped, Sony would have wanted out of the deal. If Venom had flopped, then Sony has no reason to believe they can make their own movie universe work without Spider-Man. Because Venom succeeded, that gave them the confidence that we can do these movies without Spider-Man and have Spider-Man over in the MCU making us money. Venom's success is what gave them confidence to leave Spider-Man over there. Make no mistake about it. Sony wants to have Spider-Man in the MCU. But they can't do it if it means bending over and lubing up and letting Disney drill it to them and saying, thank you, sir, may I have another? They can't do that. They wanted Spider-Man to stay in the MCU. This is all Disney's doing. The CTB channel writes, I guess Disney is just going to have to make Night Monkey movies instead. But again, remember, I know it's a joke, but just remember, Night Monkey belongs to Sony. Sony financed that movie. That means anything that happens in that movie belongs to Sony. That's the way it works. The Maz writes, which is part of the reason why Disney wants co-financing rights, and Sony cannot give those up at all. The Maz writes, everyone seems to be blaming Sony for the fallout, but in my opinion, both studios were being greedy and inflexible. Disney is just as much to blame. No. Disney is 100% to blame. Disney is 100% to blame for this. There's, in my opinion, there's simply no rational way to look at this and not see that this is clearly Disney's doing. This is clearly Disney's doing. Sony's willing to play ball, but they're not willing to bend over and get drilled. Nor should they, nor would any studio agree. So let me get this straight. You want to take away parts of our financing rights, and you want 50% of the box office, and you want 100% of the merchandising, and you want to keep 100% of the box office of the movies that our character appears in that isn't called Spider-Man. Who would accept that deal? No, but this is 100% on Disney, in my opinion. Casinema Reviews writes, Arnold Schwarzenegger's the T-800 Terminator is confirmed to be the next DLC character for Mortal Kombat 11. Look it up. I'm so excited. We actually talked about that on the John Campea Show earlier today, that the new DLC, and I hate DLC for video games. Hate it. But the new DLC for Mortal Kombat is introducing not just the Arnold Schwarzenegger T-800, it's also introducing the Joker, and it's introducing Spawn, all in Mortal Kombat. It's kind of fun when you think about it. Harry Mudd writes, the biggest movie disappointment, Hellboy. Oh, totally. I wouldn't say it's my biggest movie disappointment of all time, but in recent, just in the last year or so, maybe there is a bigger disappointment, but it's Hellboy would have to be right up there. I was excited for Hellboy. Oh, and that movie was just bad. Aaron Strelinsky writes, going to love to see how they narratively unweave the web. I see what you did there, Aaron. The web they've woven with Spider-Man being so connected to the MCU. Soft reboot, maybe? Yeah, I think that, it all depends on how you want to play around with the terminology. Soft reboot is definitely one of the ways you can term it. That you keep the characters, keep the actors playing them, and you just navigate the narrative away from the things that happened in those previous movies. Again, much like Highlander 3 did with Highlander 2. Just pretended it didn't exist. Just pretend it didn't exist, and everybody will be happy. And that certainly is one of the options available to them. I'm not saying it's necessarily the right one. I'm not saying it would necessarily work, but it is an option and it is a possibility. So let's wait and see how that kind of transpires. All right, Jared Oberfeld writes, hey, John, can you do a companion video on making good action films? I already agree. If the story sucks, shaking the camera will not help. Well, a couple things. Companion videos are me taking the unused questions from that day's John Campea Show. Because if people people like you here, Jared, if you support the channel and send in a super chat with a question, your question deserves to be answered properly in a video. So these companion videos are not meant to come up with random topics, but rather to address the questions that you guys send in. A video about making good action films, well, that's a 3-hour long course, right? But like making any good movie in any genre, start with a good story. Start with a good story, you know? You're right. In an action film, you're going, shaking the camera around. Oh, look how exciting our movie is. Start with a good story. It doesn't have to be the same kind of good story as a Shakespeare movie. Don't get me wrong. But start with something compelling. Start with a fun character. Characters we can get behind and are exciting and fun to watch. And give them a kind of a neat little story to follow around in. And give them good action, good one-liners, blah, blah, blah. And then, there are some action films that are smarter than others. Some that are just meant to be dumb fun, like Fast and the Furious movies. Some meant to be a little bit smarter, a little bit more sophisticated, like some James Bond movies. It's all different. But like I said here, Jared, we could talk about it for hours, and we just don't have time for that right now. But it's a good topic. All right. Ahmed Momin writes, isn't Disney already enough money? Greed monster. Well, yeah, but again, I don't blame them for wanting more money. That's what business is. Business is making money. If you can find ways to make more money, I don't blame him for that. But there's a difference between wanting more money and then acting completely irrationally, which is what Disney, in my opinion, has done here. Evelyn writes, it feels like no matter what happens, the winner of the Disney/Sony situation is Tom Holland, who got so much support yesterday, he trended for hours. Oh, yeah. Seriously, while everybody's saying we feel bad for Tom Holland, part of me is going, why? Everybody is loving him right now. And he's the cock of the walk, right? No matter what happens, he's got all those Spider-Man appearances under his belt. He's still got another film under contract. And if he wants to come back and play Spider-Man more, whether it's for Sony or whether it's for Sony on their own or for Sony with the MCU, he's going to have the option to do that. So don't feel too bad for him right here. He's actually coming out smelling like roses right now. And good for him. I love Tom Holland. I think this kid's great. All right. Synced Up writes, writing this before the stream, if this does end up happening, does Tom stay as Spider-Man? I heard there's still 2 movies, 2 more Watts Holland movies to be made. As far as I know, that's not true. Right now, John Watts, the director of Homecoming and Far From Home, is not under contract anymore for anybody. That doesn't mean he can't sign a new contract. He totally could. But as far as I understand right now, John Watts is not under contract at all. And I believe Tom Holland has 1 more film on his deal. And I believe Sony would exercise that option. It's a studio option for 1 more deal, and I do believe Sony will exercise that option. Now, whether or not they re-sign John Watts, who knows? I think they will, but we'll have to wait and see. Leo Milmet writes, 1 of 2. You responded to my first super chat saying, you've been talking to my mother. Now you said I'm the code name. Oh, I remember that. I'm the code name for her. Rest assured, I'm just a dude who loves the show and loves all you do. Been a fan since Collider, and your star now shines brighter than ever. Oh, thanks so much, man. Oh, sorry, there's a part 3. Where is it? I love your infectious positivity and passion. Well, seriously, Leo, thank you so much. It's always really nice. Well, everybody likes to hear nice things, but it's always super nice when people want to send in a super chat just to say something kind. That's really nice. And I appreciate it very much. And I appreciated the message you sent in the other day. I was joking around. This must be a code name for my mom. But no, really, seriously, man, I appreciate it. Thank you for being part of the film fan community here. Thank you for supporting the channel. Thank you for watching the shows. And thank you for being around as long as you have, man. And I really appreciate it. Again, thank you very much, dude. That's really nice of you. The Jenks writes, where did Ashley... Oh, Wayne... Seriously? We've answered this like 1,000 times. Look, bottom line, I said for a long time when Ashley was here, don't get too used to her being here. She's getting busy. And her schedule, thankfully, which is a good thing for an actress, her schedule just got to the point that she couldn't make her schedule here anymore. And so she had to move on. Now, I'm not saying we're never going to see her back. Personally, I hope we never see her back because that means she's doing really well. Yeah, so anyway, that's what happened with Ashley. She's great. James McLeod writes, 4th Spider-Man reboot. Hope this changes. Well, again, I'm not even totally, like I said before, I'm not even totally sure that they do reboot. Leo Milman, oh, we already did the Leo one. Corey Green writes, those Lord Miller Spidey shows are done. Probably. I don't know the intricate details, but I think you're right, Corey. I think those are probably now done. Leo Milmet writes, you should write the smallest book ever written, How to Be a Critic and Get Paid Off by Disney by John Campea. The entire book. Who knows? That don't exist. Why not? Man, seriously, I wish I was making all that money. In honesty, there are 2 entertainment companies that I either do or have ever collected paychecks from. One is Lionsgate, because I was working for Lionsgate running I put together and produced and featured myself in the show Film HQ for their Comic-Con HQ thing. So I have been, and I was completely transparent about this, I have been on Lionsgate's payroll. Lionsgate signed my checks. I also, my household, half of my household income comes from Hasbro, which is also an entertainment company because they're in the business of making movies now. So I've always been very upfront about that. And I will mention it every time. I have been on Lionsgate's payroll. I am currently, at least my household is currently on Hasbro's payroll. And that's the truth. No movie critic anywhere is on any studio's payroll. What that is are weak-minded idiots who can't handle that the critics don't agree with what they think. And so they make up excuses going, oh, I can't handle that. The critics don't agree with me. And they must be on somebody's payroll. Oh, these sad, pathetic little losers. Anyway, but yeah, because man, I mean, Robert and I actually had lunch earlier today. We were talking about, wouldn't it be sweet if we actually were on? Because I've been accused of being on everybody's payroll. I've been accused of being on Warner Brothers payroll. I've been accused of being on Disney's payroll. I've been accused of this, that, and the other thing. And I mean, what can you do? There will always be weak-minded fools who come up with excuses because they can't handle the fact that somebody else doesn't think what they think. It is what it is, and you just move on. The Jenks writes, chat answered my question. Sorry for bringing up something that was already being answered before. Here's an extra $5. I'm sorry, Jenks, what was the last one you asked? Oh, where did Ashley go? Oh, there you go. No, don't worry about it, Jenks. Don't worry about it. You weren't here. I mean, I may go, I do get tired when a question that we've answered a million times get asked, but don't take me getting a little bit flabbergasted as if you did something wrong. You didn't. So just bear with me as I roll my eyes for a second. I'll get over it. But thank you for that, Jenks. All right. Thunder Knight writes, does the drama between Sony / Disney with Spider-Man mean it's less likely that a collaboration between Universal and Disney over a Hulk movie will ever happen? I don't think so, but that's a totally different situation. The situation with Universal and Marvel over Hulk is very cut and dry, clean and simple. Universal has the distribution rights. If Marvel wants to finance and make their own a Hulk movie, they can. It's just that Disney or Universal then has the rights to distribute it. That's a very different situation from the Sony and Marvel one. Sony doesn't just have the distribution rights. They are the financiers of it as well. They own the rights to the character. Universal does not own the rights to Hulk. They have the distribution rights and the distribution rights only. So it's a very different scenario. So I don't think Disney and Sony working out a deal helps the Disney and Universal situation. I don't think Disney and Sony failing to make a deal hurts the Universal and Disney situation. I really think they're completely different scenarios with completely different circumstances. Deather writes, both sides are to blame. No, only Disney. Nothing wrong trying to renegotiate after the deal ran out. Disney demands too much, but old deal had better terms for Sony. Well, that's Disney's fault. Disney negotiated that deal. And Disney said, and they were right, that original deal was a sweet deal for Disney. Sony pays for everything. Disney gets pure profit. They get 100% of the merchandising rights, and they get to keep all the box office money from the movies that Spider-Man appears in the MCU. There's a reason Disney negotiated that deal, because it was a sweet-ass deal. It was a no-lose scenario for Disney. Don't be mad at the deal. Disney's the one that came up with it. Disney's the one that negotiated that deal. And they said, when they negotiated it, this is a great deal for everybody. This is a great deal for Sony. This is a great deal for us. We're very happy. This is a fair deal, blah, blah, blah. Now they want to pretend like it's not a good deal? Nah. And besides, nobody's saying they shouldn't renegotiate or ask for a little bit more. But there's a difference between negotiating, asking for a little bit more, and for asking the other guy to bend over, lube up, and take a ramming. There's a difference. And that's what Disney's done here. They've asked for co-financing rights, keeping merchandising, keeping 100% of the money made from box office movies that Spider-Man appears in the MCU, and for 50%? No. You don't look, it is the diplomatic to say that it's both parties' fault. It is. And that I like to default to that position, frankly. I like to default of, look, there's responsibility on both sides, but this isn't the case. This is Disney's fault. This is Disney's responsibility. This is Disney's doing. And they're the ones being unreasonable. I just don't see. Look, as a Disney fan, I would love to be able to see it another way, but there's just no other logical, rational way to see it, in my opinion. I would love to see it another way because I'm a Disney fan, but I just don't see any other way to do it. Let's see. Deather also writes, maybe leak is just negotiating tactics. Let's hope so. I agree. Look, there's still hope they could make out a deal. Fingers crossed that they are able to make something work. Jim Jambaroo writes, I like that name. One of two. Just watch your video on Spider-Man release, and I have thoughts. If it's taking a 90 to 120 minute movie and releasing a new 3-hour cut, I'm fine. But this is just 4 minutes. That's why I'm mad. As to the home video, if they release the theatrical and director's cut at once, I'm fine. You can pick. But doing one, then 4 months later, no. That's the exact same thing I used to say back in the day. With multiple different versions of a movie being released on home video, what used to piss me off is that they release the movie on DVD. Oh, good. We're going to run out and get it. And then like 4 months later, after everybody's run out and bought the first one, now see the extended version, special DVD. It's like, mother effers. Why didn't you give me the option of that before? Instead of tricking me into buying one version of the movie, and now I got to buy another version of the movie if I want that extra stuff. Why didn't you put them both out at the same time saying, hey, buy just the regular version of the movie for one price, that's a little bit cheaper, or this version of the movie that has the extra footage on it for a little bit more? That would be fair. I used to hate that, Jim. Man, I used to hate that so much. Because they were manipulating us. And I hate it when they do that, dude. I absolutely 100% hate it. Like you said, nope. It is a world full of nope for me, Jim. All right. Brian Esparza writes, just came back from Galaxy's Edge and built a lightsaber. Nice. Gotta say, if you love Star Wars as much as you do, it's totally worth going, though it's very pricey. Yeah, I've been to Galaxy's Edge a number of times. Always have a great time at it. What I have not done is done the lightsaber build. To me, it's just too expensive. It's just too expensive. I love Galaxy's Edge without building the lightsaber. I gotta tell you though, Brian, I just can't justify the expense in my head. Now, I don't know, maybe one of these days I'll treat myself, but I am a cheap bastard. I really am. There's a reason. I think I've owned this shirt for 7 years. I mean, it's just, I'm a cheap bastard. I do not like spending my money on myself or whatever, but maybe one of these days I'll give in and do it, because everybody I know who has done it has loved the experience of building the lightsaber and getting to keep it. Maybe someday I just have a hard time because it's like a couple $100. Come on. Anyway, so it seems a little pricey to me, and I've fully enjoyed my time there, even without the lightsaber stuff. But maybe one of these days I'll do it. Thanks for the recommendation. Wade O'Neill writes, can Sony use the same supporting cast exactly as they are in the MCU? Sexy Aunt May, non-geriatric Vulture, Alex, Jonah Jameson, etc. Yep. As far as I know, because Sony is the financer of Far From Home and Homecoming, everything that happens in those movies belongs to them. And that's why they need to keep they need to keep all financing rights. They don't want a co-financing deal with Disney, because once you let Disney start paying for things, they get certain rights in the movie, and Sony cannot let that happen. So as far as I know, Wade, and I could be wrong. Let's be clear. I could be wrong. But as far as I understand it, yes, they can totally use those characters. Those are Spider-Man characters. They have the rights to Spider-Man. They can use Spider-Man characters and any new characters they introduced in those Spider-Man movies, because they financed it. So as far as I know, Ben Rayner writes, hey, John and gang, I made you guys a little something, tweeted you guys, and John, I posted it in the Facebook group. I hope it puts a smile on your face. I will make sure to go and check that out, Ben. Thanks for the heads up, dude. By the way, our Patreon supporters, we have a Patreon supporter Facebook group for the John Campea Show. And It's worth being a Patreon supporter just for that Facebook group, because our it's a very active group, and our, like Ben, we got people posting stuff in there all the time. There are always conversations going on. I always get a kick out of going over there and seeing what's going on in there. So anyway, thanks for the heads up on that, Ben. I will check it out. All right. Aaron McDonough writes, Spider-Man deal could have been worked out more. I feel Disney got greedy. They need to calm down. It's not just greedy, Aaron. It's so outrageously ridiculous. Again, I said this earlier, it makes me sort of suspect that maybe they sabotaged it on purpose. They had to know that no studio would ever agree to the terms that they were suggesting. It just wouldn't happen. And if they knew that, then the only possible explanation for still trying to go through with it is that they were trying to sabotage. I don't know. We'll wait and see. Soapbox writes, what Fox properties could Disney trade with Sony to possibly make sending Spider-Man back to Marvel seem worth it? None. Avatar. That's about it. Avatar, X-Men, certainly not the Fantastic Four. That's not worth anything. And I'm not even sure X-Men would be worth it. The only thing that they've got that's a Fox property that would be worth sending to Sony. Sony's not giving up Spider-Man for Predator. Sony's not giving up Spider-Man for almost any. The only thing I can think of is Avatar. And if you're Disney, you ain't giving up Avatar. You're not giving up Avatar. So honestly, I don't think there's any viable deal on the table. Maybe X-Men? Maybe. But yeah, I just don't see there being a viable deal on the table. I mean, it's worth thinking about, but I just don't know that there's a deal there to be made anywhere that's actually worth it to Sony. Harry Mudd writes, I love Anna Torv. She was so great in Fringe. She was. And as good as she was in Fringe, Harry, I'm telling you, she's even better in Mindhunter. I am loving her in Mindhunter. I'm up to episode 4 in season 2. So I got to get caught up on the rest of the season, but I am loving her in this show, man. Sharan Aurora writes, how about that ending of episode 4, John? Look, so far the entire season, every episode has been absolutely glorious. I've been eating up Sharan. I've been eating it up. Jim Jambaroo writes, Marvel has the universe. DC has one-shots. Perfect. You know, I like to think, and by the way, DC's not just one-shots. They are a shared cinematic universe, even though they're kind of focusing on individual movies right now. I just would like both Marvel and DC to embrace the idea that you can have both shared cinematic universe and a few standalones. I just don't think it has to be an either or. I think it can be a both and. Harry Mudd writes, are you a god? Of course, from Ghostbusters. That was brought up on today's show. When somebody asks if you're a god, you say yes. That was a really funny conversation earlier. I like that one a lot. Ryan Lohner writes, Sense8 quelled all my doubts about the Wachowskis, still able to write great sci-fi, perhaps the greatest thing they've ever done. You know what's funny, Ryan? Because Chris was also saying earlier that she quite likes it. I've never seen Sense8. The main reason I never saw Sense8 is because I know a lot of other people who did watch it and were like, and didn't like it at all. But then I hear from people like you, from people like Chris, that you really liked it. So I've never watched it. I've never been interested, but I don't know that I'll ever forgive them for, well, first of all, I didn't like Speed Racer either. I know Speed Racer has its fans. I thought it was terrible. Jupiter Ascending is one of the worst movies made in the last 50 years. So I don't know. Maybe someday I'll give Sense8 a chance. Like I said, clearly there's people like you, Chris, some others that really, really like it. I've never seen it, so maybe someday I should give it a shot. Madhu Vatten writes, love The Matrix, but never saw the sequels since everyone told me they were shit. Might have to see them now, though. Well, especially because, of course, we talked about on the show earlier today that Matrix 4 with Keanu Reeves and Carrie-Anne Moss is coming. My position on it has always been this. I like Matrix 2. I know a lot of people don't, and I get it, but it's not as good as the first Matrix. But I thought Matrix 2 was actually pretty damn good. I was entertained by it. Seraph, the twins, all that. I like it. I think it's good. Can't say the same about 3. What I would suggest, well, you know what, Madhu, it'd probably be a good idea to get caught up. Check them out, see them for yourself. Just remember, I think 2 is actually pretty good. Not as good as the first one, but pretty good. And 3, you'll probably see why most people don't like 3. Let's see. Samir Tesfaye writes, I'd be really surprised if Sony gives up anything over 20% of the box office to mighty Disney. Also, I'm so freaking pumped for Matrix 4. Jeff Darrow's back as conceptual designer. Yay. Actually, that's pretty cool. That's pretty cool. Here's the thing. Take co-financing off the table. If Disney drops their demand for a co-financing deal, I can see Sony going up over 20%. I can see them going to 20, 25, 30. What they will not accept and they cannot accept is a co-financing agreement. They cannot do that. They cannot enter into that. If Disney takes that off the table, I can totally see Sony doing 20, 25, maybe even 30. I really can. Not 50. But 20, 25, 30, yeah, I could see it. It's that co-financing thing that's got to be taken off the table. Araceli Villa writes, hey, John, Chris, and Rob, is it too late for Matrix 4? That's a good question. Look, there's a difference between is it late and is it too late? Is it late for Matrix 4? Yes. Is it too late? Well, considering the excitement that we've been seeing in the online fan world over the Matrix 4 news, I think you'd have to conclude that it's not too late. It's not too late for Matrix 4. So I'm going to say no. It's late. It probably should have been done like 5 years ago if they were going to do it, but I still think they can do it and make it work. All right. Harry Mudd writes, do we need or want a Matrix 4? For me, the answer is simple. No, we don't. Oh, I don't think we need one. No. But then again, we've never needed any motion picture made. Do people want one? Again, I go back to my last answer, Harry. Maybe I don't personally. I'm not excited about it, but I'll give it a shot when it comes out. I'm intrigued. But gauging the buzz we've seen about it online, I think the answer is pretty clear. There is a desire for a Matrix 4. It's not coming from me, but there is a desire for it. Need one? No. Want one? It seems like there is a desire for one. So let's see how that works out. Alan Peaks just sends in a super chat to support the channel. Thank you, Alan. Dominic Francis writes, have you seen Fargo? My favorite ongoing show. Some of the best writing, editing, and directing I've seen in a while. Highly recommend. No, I have never seen Fargo. I've seen the movie Fargo, but I've never seen the television show. I hear nothing but good things about it. I think Ewan McGregor won like a Golden Globe for being in that too, right? I believe. But I have never heard anything, but I've never talked to a single person, unlike Sense8, where I've talked to some people who liked it, talked to some people who didn't. Unlike that, with Fargo, everybody I've talked to who's actually watched the show swears by it and absolutely loves it. So one of these days, Dominic, I got to get on board and start watching that. Light Runner 87 writes, why is Disney panicking because of the Dark Phoenix bomb? Considering the bad press, they should have known that it would bomb. I don't think that's it alone. It's not just Dark Phoenix. A number of the films that they've put out have underperformed and flopped. And I think when they look at that collectively and then look at their upcoming slate and see the similarities between the upcoming slate and what's already come out and flopped, that's what's made them nervous. It's not just the one film. It's all the films that's come out so far and underperformed and flopped, and that has concerned them. Are they reacting a little too quickly? Maybe. But again, it's not just over the one film. We got to keep that in mind. Suthius writes, the real reason why Disney is doing this, there's this Campea fella who doesn't like the Iron Man Jr. route we're going, so no more Spider-Man then. That's right. They pay so much attention to what I'm talking about. like crap. Campea doesn't like Iron Man Jr., better pull the plug. I'd like to think the world works that way. Sadly, it doesn't, though. Wouldn't the world be a better place if it did? But it does not. It certainly does not. Good thought, though, Suthius. Joshua Mitchell writes, hey, Campea crew, Spidey ordeal to be rectified? I listen, I'm holding out hope. As long as there's time, there's hope. And there's time. And I gotta believe, I gotta hope that at some point here, cooler heads will prevail. Sony doesn't need Spider-Man. Sorry. Marvel doesn't need Spider-Man. Sony doesn't need Marvel. But it'd be beneficial for both. And it would be better for both. Even if neither of them need each other, I think it'd be beneficial. So here's hoping. Ed Matthews writes, I hope this Spidey deal flop is another James Gunn situation where Disney admits they were wrong and they listen to the fans. I certainly hope so. Here's the problem, Matthew. The majority of the fans are knee-jerk reacting to this and not actually looking into the facts of the situation and just running off of headlines and going, boycott Sony, boycott Sony. It's like, this isn't Sony's fault. Look at all of the context here. This is clearly Disney's doing. So that's the difference here, Ed. But I hope you are right. I hope this is another James Gunn situation where at some point Disney realizes, you know what, it would be best for everybody, including us, if we went back on this. Hopefully cooler heads will prevail, Ed. That's what we're hoping for, and fingers crossed. Suthius writes, it's like when my son asks for a piece of cake after dinner. He eats it, but asks for 10 more pieces. Boy, you better sit your behind down, crazy mofo. It's true. It's true. Hey, boss, I like a little bit of a raise. You know what? You've done good work. Sure. How much of a raise do you want? Well, right now I'm making $2,000 a month. Yes, you are. So maybe like $2,200 a month, maybe $2,300 a month. I was thinking $20,000 a month. That's exactly what Disney just did. Plus a co-financing agreement, plus all merchandising rights, plus 100% of the box office of the other work. You know, it's so stupid and unreasonable. It is nuts. Reese Hughes writes, Rob, will you be watching Picard? Oh, Rob was going to be watching Picard. He may never watch Discovery again, but I can guarantee you he's going to watch Picard. Now, he might watch 3 or 4 episodes and give up on it, but I guarantee you, I already know for a fact, Rob and I have talked about this quite a bit. He's intrigued to see Picard, so hopefully it'll keep him hooked. All right, Matt Thornton writes, I 100% agree with you, John. Have them all sit down and work out a fair deal. That way, Disney wins, Sony wins, and most importantly, all the fans win. Look, there is a win-win-win here. For Disney, for Sony, for the fans. There is a win-win-win here. All it takes is for them to take their heads and their mouse ears out of their collective asses, sit the hell down, and work out a deal. Look at how much both of them have benefited over the past number of years. Look how Sony has benefited. Look how Disney has benefited. This is a good deal. And maybe you need to change it up a bit from the original deal. That's fine. But this is a good deal. This is a win-win-win. Sony win, Marvel win, fans win. Sit your frickin' asses down in a room, shut the hell up, and make a deal happen. Come on, guys. Grow up. Grow up. Coming from the guy in the Rebel Alliance hat. Grow up. Make this deal work. Anyway. Frank Gradia writes, what do you guys think about another Matrix? Love all you guys and come here for reviews on movies. If you talked about it already, sorry, I missed the beginning of the show. No problem. Here's the thing and we did talk about it on the show earlier today. I am intrigued by a new Matrix. I love the first Matrix like everybody does. I like the second Matrix more than most people do. And like everybody else, I don't like the third. My concern is I have not been a fan of almost anything the Wachowskis have done since The Matrix. And on top of that, the third film, look, the franchise went downhill. First Matrix was great. I thought the second Matrix was good, but a lot of people don't. But I thought it was at least good, and the third one not so good. The Matrix franchise went on this trajectory quality-wise, downhill. So it ended on a bad note. I haven't been thrilled with the work of the director. So the most I'm willing to say personally is that I'm intrigued, but I'm not excited. Now, maybe later I'll get excited, but as of right now, I'm just not there. Intrigued, not excited. So that's my thoughts right now, Frank. Rob was very different. Rob was quite excited about it, which is cool to see. But me, I'm intrigued, but not excited right now. Lid Track Team writes, people seem to think Disney is being greedy and just wanted 50% of profits, but they also wanted to put up half of the production and marketing costs. No. But that's a thing. You think that's a good thing. If Sony gives Disney a co-financing agreement, that is giving over some of the rights to the property. That is the axe in the face. They cannot do that. That is the most greedy thing. Now, uninformed fans look at that and go, oh, well, Disney wants to put up some of the money. Isn't that great? Even if it had nothing to do with the rights, and it does. But even if it didn't, oh, good, Sony puts up $70 million for the production of the movie and get an extra $300 million? That's not good math. But the main thing here is this. Remember, we were talking about Night Monkey. Night Monkey belongs to Sony because Sony paid for the movie that Night Monkey was introduced in. Therefore, Night Monkey belongs to them. If you let another company finance it with you, now they have some of the rights in that. And that is a situation that Sony cannot allow. Disney, more than anything else, wants a co-financing agreement, and Disney, more than anything else, cannot allow that to happen. So fans who are looking at it very short-sightedly are going, oh, Disney wants to help pay for the movies. Isn't that great at Disney? No, that's the most greedy thing they've got. That's the most greedy move they're making. Because you can make a little money with the box office, but you can make a lot of money long-term if you have control. And once you have a co-financing agreement, you acquire a certain amount of control over the property that you're financing. And Sony cannot allow that to happen. They cannot allow that to happen. Fun Overlord X writes, hey everyone, the perfect resolve for Sony and Marvel, Donald Trump's art of the deal, baby. Just saying. I'm not even going to touch that with a 10-foot pole, my friend. Armand the New Age writes, I see why Sony turned it down, but I want Feige with full control. Unite the MCU with his name attached and other properties would make more money. That's a little simplistic, I think. Look, if you're Sony, you would never do that. Spider-Man is the most valuable property that you own. You don't give that up. No way. You'd be a fool. I'll go one step further. You'd be a raging idiot to give that up. And I'm sure Armand New Age, if you were the one right now that had the Spider-Man rights, you can easily say, I want Kevin Feige to be in full control. You can say that. But if you were actually the one that owned the Spider-Man rights, you would never do that. You would never do that. And it'd be ridiculous for us to expect another company to do that. It can't happen. It can't happen. What we've had for the last couple of years is the best of both worlds. Sony financing the movies, being 100% in control of their property, and having Kevin Feige be at the helm creatively with Sony's input as well. It's been a best of both worlds. That's why I'm still hopefully, that Sony and Disney can work out a deal so we can get back to this best of both worlds and have a win-win-win for everybody. Because right now, it's not a win for anybody, unfortunately. All right. Valhalla Erickson writes, at least we'd finally have a Spider-Man villain whose backstory doesn't revolve around Tony. Yeah, finally. And Uncle Ben actually being acknowledged this time around. Yeah, you can acknowledge Uncle Ben without going back and showing the origin story again. Like, I like the idea of just picking up Spider-Man already into his hero life. And you don't have to go back and revisit Uncle Ben again. But acknowledge Uncle Ben. Talk about Uncle Ben. Mention Uncle Ben. I honestly don't know why they haven't done that. I really don't. Other than the fact that the suitcase had Ben's initials. Big deal. Why not at least mention him? That's always been a little bit confusing to me. Anyway, JD Small Esquire writes, what annoys me is the Spider-Man rightfully belongs to Marvel. Like, no, they sold the rights to them a while ago, and Sony has always kept to the deal. Yep, that's the thing. Whenever somebody says they really belong to Marvel, well, Marvel sold them. Sony didn't sneak into Marvel headquarters in the middle of the night and sneak out with the deed to Spider-Man. We stole it from them. No. Marvel was, for the love of God, please somebody buy these rights. We're going broke. Can somebody please buy these? So I was like, okay, we'll buy them. Sony gave them money. They took the money. They don't rightfully belong to Marvel. They rightfully belong to Sony. Marvel chose to sell them. Sony didn't sneak into their studios in the middle of the night and steal them. Marvel sold them. And that's what it is. Ray Tracy writes, hey ho, Bob Iger has got to go. Bob Iger's great. Bob Iger is a master executive. He's probably the best example of an executive out there. Maybe I don't like how this one deal is happening, but for every one of these deals that I think Disney is botching, they make 1,000 other deals that have worked out to be gold. So let's not jump on this, hey, ho, Bob Iger's got to go. The dude's a genius. Flo Fruit Loops writes, Disney should keep 5%, but Sony should allow them to use all of Spider-Man's characters, not just one Sony allows. No, you can't, because look, then what are you doing with your own movie universe? Like, Sony needs to profit from this by making their own movies. If you just say Marvel can use whatever characters they want, well, then that limits you. That would be a terrible thing to do. I got 1,000% Flow. I would rather give up 20% of the box office than give up all the rights to the characters and just let Marvel make whatever characters they want. No way. No way. I got to completely disagree with you, my brother. Got to completely disagree with you on that. All right. Devilman writes, just a super chat for Chris and her beautiful heart. Aw, that's awfully nice, Devilman. Thank you so much for that, dude. It's always nice when people send in stuff just to say something nice. Sheepdog117 writes, did Marvel do 5% of the work making Homecoming? No, they didn't. But there's a reason Marvel made that deal, because they didn't just get 5%. They got 5% with, by the way, that 5% of Far From Home equals $55 million. Plus, they didn't pay for a penny of it. And they got 100% of the merchandising rights. And they get to keep 100% of the box office that has Spider-Man, Sony's character, in it. And they don't have to give a dime of that to Sony. Did Marvel do 5% of the work? No, but that's how these deals work with every studio. They got $55 million for free. They get 100% of the merchandising rights, which is worth a fortune. And they keep 100% of the box office that Spider-Man appears in their MCU movies. Don't do this whole, oh, look, poor Marvel only gets 5%. There's a reason Disney crafted that deal. Because they got 5% of free money without spending a dime of their own money, getting 100% of the merchandising rights, and keeping 100% of the box office of the other movies they put Spider-Man in, even though Spider-Man isn't their character. Don't cry poor. Don't cry, oh, poor Disney. Disney crafted that deal. And they crafted that deal because they knew it was a sweet deal that has worked out for them immensely. It has worked out for them immensely. So don't pull this, oh, poor Marvel's being treated so unfairly. Oh, only 5%? What? Yeah. Look at the deal as a whole. Look at the deal as a whole. It was a sweet deal. And should it be fair for them to ask for a little bit more? Absolutely. Absolutely it is. 50%, F you. F you, Disney, 50%. You want 50%? And you want to keep the 100% of the box office of the other movies Spider-Man appears in, and you want to keep 100% of the merchandising rights, and you want to have a co-financing agreement? F you. It's extortion. It's pure extortion. Anyway, I wish I was born in the 1980s. Writes, what do you think Sony could do with Spider-Man without different involvement? What do you think Spider-Man could do? What do you think Sony could do with Spider-Man without different involvement? I apologize. I don't know what it is you're asking. I'm sorry about that, dude. One more time. What do you think Sony could do with Spider-Man without different involvement? I'm sorry. I'm sorry, man. I apologize. I just don't know what it is you're asking. Sorry about that, dude. Venkat Ram Saran Tumala writes, one of two. I think all Disney news. Sorry, let me try this again. I think all D news with Disney/Fox and Disney/Sony is all planned to come out after San Diego Comic-Con and before D23 so that the audience at large would not care about this stuff. This is a dirty move on Disney's part, I think. The seeds of calling Disney evil are on the horizon. I don't know. I think it is possible for you to do one stupid thing and not be completely stupid. I think it is possible for you to say something insensitive without it making you a completely insensitive person. I think it's possible for somebody to trip without being a klutz. I think it is possible that Disney is making a mistake, like they are with this situation, without it coloring the totality of who and what they are. So, while I completely agree that Disney is the one who's responsible and it is their fault for this situation completely, I don't think that colors the entirety of them or the company or what they're accomplishing, you know? So I sympathize with you, Venkat. I do. I sympathize with you on that, but I don't want us to get hyperbolic and go too far with it. I think this situation is Disney's fault. But I hardly think that this one situation and them mismanaging this one situation takes away from the way they perfectly manage 1,000 other situations. So I don't want to paint all of Disney with the brush of this one mistake. It's a bad mistake, and I think they're botching it, and it's their fault. But I don't think it colors them entirely as a company. You know what I'm saying? But anyway, that's just the way I'm looking at it. Who knows, man? Maybe you'll end up being right. 4D1 Dreams and Declarations writes, hear me out. Okay, 4D1, I'm going to hear you out. Though it sounds crazy and impossible, if Sony partnered with Warner Brothers and you started seeing Spider-Man characters show up in DC movies, good idea, sounds weird, but is it technically illegal? No, it's not that it's illegal, but it would violate the contract. Disney or Spider-Man, see, Sony has the rights to make Spider-Man movies. What they don't have the right to do is sell those rights to another company, nor can they start putting Spider-Man in other cinematic universes with other studios and other characters. They can't do that. That's not something that their lease would allow them to do. They have the right to make their movies, but they can't sell that right to other studios, and they cannot join that Spider-Man character with other studios' properties. They can't do that. So while I totally appreciate the imagination for D1, it's not something that they would be allowed to do under the terms of their agreement. They just can't do that. And understandably so. So good imagination. You're thinking outside the box, and I like that. But that's a particular scenario that wouldn't be allowed to happen. All right. Andrew Atholter writes, remember the state of the Spider-Man franchise before the deal. Sony had almost ruined the crown jewels of Marvel's characters. 50-50 split is fair and reasonable relative to the value Feige creates. No, it's not. What was the state of the Spider-Man franchise before the deal? They just made a movie that made over $700 million. You're asking, look at the state Spider-Man was in before the deal. Okay, they had a movie that made $708 million. It wasn't a particularly good movie, to say the least. It wasn't a particularly good movie, but the movie right before that was a good movie. Over 70% critic rating, over 70% audience rating for the first Amazing Spider-Man. What was the state? They had one bad movie. I mean, they also had another bad movie a few movies ago, but The Amazing Spider-Man 1 was a good movie. Maybe you didn't like it, and that's cool, but the majority of the critics liked it, and the majority of the fans liked it. Second Amazing Spider-Man, not so much, but even that bad movie made over $700 million. What was the state of Spider-Man franchise before the deal? Actually, perfectly okay. There is no company in the world that would agree to a 50-50 split. No company in the world. It is fucking extortion. It is absolute extortion. You want 50% of the box office and 100% of the merchandising rights and keep 100% of the box office that Spider-Man appears in the other films. That's not fair. That's not rational. That's not reasonable. That's extortion. It's criminal. It's unconscionable. It's horrendous. And as I've been having other film studio executives writing to me and telling me no studio in the world would dream to accept it. There's just no studio in the world that would accept that. It's an asinine proposal, an absolute asinine proposal. And you're free to feel however you want about it. But I'm sorry, if you look at this rationally from a logical point of view, that's preposterous. It's absolutely preposterous. If Spider-Man movies have been making $200 million, $250 million, and all of a sudden now they were making $900 million, well, maybe, but still, Sony owns the rights. That's value. You can't just give that value away. And remember, on top of all that, Sony wants a co-financing agreement, which would compromise Sony's rights to the character. There is no universe in known reality that any rational, sane, or even semi-competent movie executive would ever agree to that. None. And Disney knows that. Disney knows that. It's just completely unreasonable. Anyway, Venkat writes, somebody make a meme with Disney as Palpatine and Sony as a confused Travolta. I don't even know what that means, and I think that's hilarious. All right, final question, guys, and then we are all now caught up. Precious Igalo writes, over under 20%. The voice in Hobbs and Shaw is Hobbs's dad. Under. What somebody else suggested earlier today was that the evil voice in Hobbs and Shaw is actually Han, which wouldn't that be hilarious? I actually brought that up with Robert at lunch today, and Rob said, I bet there's a possibility that's true. And I think it is. It's possible. They'd have to retcon a lot of stuff to do it, but it could be really funny. It could be funny. All right, guys, listen, that will do it for this special companion video, 95% of which was about the Spider-Man and Disney deal. Look, I'm very clear on my feelings on this. I am a big Disney fan, huge Disney fan. But this is some first grade BS that Disney's tried to pull. It completely shatters any ideas of fairness, logic, or rationale. It doesn't work. It's so dumb. This is 100% Disney's fault as far as I'm concerned. And I really hope that somehow, some way, these two sides are able to get together and make a deal together. Anyway, don't forget, come on back and join us for the next episode of the John Campea Show, which is, of course, every weekday, Monday through Friday at 9 a.m. Pacific Standard Time. And the next one up is with me, Aaron, and Chris. I hope you guys are back to join us for that. Then we'll be back again on Friday. And, of course, shows on the weekend. We're looking forward to seeing you guys. Come on back. Thanks a lot for being here, guys. And thanks for your patience as we got through all those questions that came in. Thank you to all of you guys for sending in the questions, for giving your points of view, whether I agreed or disagreed with them. Thank you for sending in your point of view. And thank you for giving us great fun things to talk about and for supporting the channel along the way as you did it. So for now, that'll do it for me, guys. My name's John Campea. And until my next video, bye-bye.